Blog Talk Radio.
2017. Big Truth. The big talk for you. What up? Shout out Avo King. Big Boo. Me. Shout out everybody. Check it. Hey yo, debate talk 4. You so you can absorb. Information free of charge so you can afford. Get poppin'. Live off the greatest doctrine. Sip the juice, know the ledge like the great Rakim. On a mission, not a small time thing. Defense biblical, offense got the haters watching. Hands are still, footwork is still. Getting it in, see if you can stand for real. If you rep Kim and cool, yo I rep Israel. If you Torah based only or new as well, welcome to listen. Style always fair decision. Two sides come together to compare what's written. Seeking the facts, seeking the max, teaching the acts, leaking the tracks. Call while you eating your snacks. Music in my bones, DNA, C-double-E and K. Little something for the showtime, you can play. One love, one love, one love.
Study to show thyself approved. You're now listening to the Baby Talk V Radio.
What's going on, brothers and sisters? This is Brother Stanley Sylvain of Sin No More Ministries. I'm letting you know that every time I'm not putting together some lessons to bless the people out there, I am definitely listening to Sal Showtime and Debate Talk for you. God bless you all. Peace.
Blessed be our Father God and His Son Jesus Christ. This is your beloved brother LeVar, co-teacher at Absolute Bible Truth Ministries. And I'm taking this tremendous opportunity that Brother Sal has given me to invite you guys out there listening to the Absolute Bible Truth broadcast on Blog Talk Radio. If you are out there and you have been searching for biblical truth, or you want answers to your questions, you can catch us every Saturday, the weekly Sabbath day our Father has given us. We begin our teaching in between 4 and 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Call in by dialing 319-527-6197. Again, call in by dialing 319-527-6197. Our lead teacher, Brother Josh, serves us up a meal, and I promise you, if you have a hunger for understanding the Word, you will get full. Also, like our Facebook page, which is the title of our ministry, Absolute Bible Truth, all one word. In addition to that, check out our website, AbsoluteBibleTruth.com, for other study material and online classes. Absolute Bible Truth is a congregation who focuses on the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth concerning the Word of God, while leaving out all personal opinion, speculation, and belief. Thank you.
Hi, this is Tyrone Thompson, host of the Blog Talk Radio broadcast, Talk Real Solutions. Please tune in and listen to all of our shows 7 nights a week at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. At Talk Real Solutions, we cover a variety of topics to ensure we speak about what may be needed in our community at any time. Talk Real Solutions is the hottest blog talk radio show going on right now. You can listen to our broadcast at www.blogtalkradio.com/Talk Real Solutions, or visit our website at www.talkrealsolutions.com. Also, like our Facebook page at www.facebook.com/Talk Real Solutions. You can call in at any time during the show and add to the conversation and offer your solutions at 1-858-357-8453. That's 1-858-357-8453. 888-357-8453 because at Talk Real Solutions, we want to make sure you have a chance to talk real solutions.
Shalom, Israel. This is Brother Robert, a.k.a. Pastor Nobody, from the Fountain of Israel Bible Studies class. You can find us on thefountainofisrael.com or use the search box on YouTube and type in Fountain of Israel. You can also email us at foibiblestudies@inbox.com. Again, that is foibiblestudies@inbox.com. We believe the whole Bible is the truth and relevant to our lives today. Join us weekly as we feed the flock with the uncut word of God. Matthew 4:4 says, "Man shall not live by bread alone, but by every word that proceeds out of the mouth of God." So until next time, this is Pastor Nobody. Search the scriptures and prove all things. Shalom, Israel.
This is Ronald Francoeur representing from Atlanta, Georgia. And when I'm not busy in the studio, I'm checking out Debate Talk for You Radio. Keep up the great work, Sal Showtime.
Don't touch that dial. You're now listening to Debate Talk for You Radio. Hey, what's going on, everybody? How you guys doing? Welcome to another show. You're now listening to Season 7 of Debate Talk Radio. Of course, I'm your host, Sal, and we are back with another classic show for you guys. Well, we'll begin the Righteous War series. That's right, we're beginning the Righteous War series. That's 4 debates for 4 nights beginning today. We definitely appreciate the people out there that's been tuning in and sharing the flyer all over social media. We have it on Instagram. A lot of people looking forward to these 4 debates for 4 nights. That's going to happen right here on Debate Talk Radio. So we welcome everybody to the Righteous War series on Debate Talk Radio. Today's show is entitled, "Is Polygyny a Man's Right from the Creator?" Once again, today's topic of debate is polygyny a man's right from the Creator? Actually, today is going to be the first time ever that we have a male versus female debate right here on Debate Talk Radio. So it's going to be one of those history-making situations for the brand. So we definitely looking forward to this particular debate, and we definitely appreciate the listeners out there that's calling in. I see you guys calling in via phone and via Skype down in that number, 319-527-6239. Of course, shout out to the people that's on social media, checking out the show on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, that's listening live. Again, if you're inside a group on Facebook, do me a favor, you're listening to the show, share it on your personal page. Let people know that Debate Talk for You is live, and of course it's on the air. And this is the show for the new listeners out there. This is the show where you could call in during the Q&A segment of the show and ask your questions and your comments. As a matter of fact, we have a particular format where for different portions of this segment of Debate Talk Radio, the listening audience can definitely call in and ask their questions. So we welcome the listeners out there to call in. Only rule that we have is that we keep it clean, keep it professional. When it's on the show, we have people listening with their kids. And believe it or not, and we even have some elderly people checking out the show all across the globe. Again, today's show is entitled, "Is Polygyny a Man's Right from the Creator?" Without further ado, let's jump into it and introduce the special guest. My first special guest, he's been here before inside the Lion's Den for the first time. He debated Brother Jason for the first time on Debate Talk Radio, but now he is back, and we welcome him back on the platform for Righteous Wars. This is Brother Gene. Welcome to the show.
Well, good evening, guys. How you guys doing?
We're doing pretty good, man. So how has it been since the last debate? What has been the response since the last debate that you've had on the platform? Let the people know.
Well, we've gotten a tremendous influx of people that we got to our Polygamy HQ Facebook group and page, and it's been real well, actually.
I don't know. What have you been doing to prepare for this particular debate tonight?
Taking care of my family. I think that's the most biblical response. No, just your basic study. I've been studying this thing for quite a while. God knows I can always use a refresher here and there, but yeah, we're just basically been studying the best of my ability, and hopefully I'm smart enough to get a few good points in. Because I guess our speaker's pretty intelligent young lady's been doing this for, she said, 20 years, and has formal debate training. So I'm up against a pretty significant opponent.
All right, so that was Brother Gene right here on Debate Talk Radio. We appreciate him. And my next special guest is actually her first time debating inside the Lions on this platform. However, she's no stranger to debate. And actually, we know her from the Relationship Challenge. She's part of the home panel, and she's here right now on the Righteous War segment right now on Debate Talk Radio. We definitely appreciate her. This is Mayanah. We appreciate you. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Sal. Shalom, everyone. How's everybody doing?
We're doing pretty good. Let the people know, how have you been preparing for this debate?
I've been doing what I always do. I have been doing a lot of work with Sister Amuna. As you know, I partner with her to deal with many of the issues that are facing the community and many of the concerns that we find happening or expressed over social media. So in terms of this particular debate, not a lot. There's been some review of the previous show and what kind of concerns were brought up there, and a review of some of the other material that we have seen repeated over time. And, this isn't a new issue, but it is a persistent one, so it has value and it deserves to be revisited until there's a degree of comfort and familiarity so that the people can make informed decisions.
All right, so once again, we're about to get it started. Of course, I got to let the people know, though, what the format is for this particular debate. For the first time, again, like I said, it's still going to be the first time we have a lion versus a lioness right here on Debate Talk Radio. And let's let the people know what the format is. Of course, we're going to start off with an opening statement. For 5 minutes to present your scriptures relating to the topic, explain for clarity, and then ask your question. Second, your opponent's going to respond to you. He has 5 minutes to respond and present his, respond to your question. And after that, it's going to be a dialogue session for 10 minutes. They're going to speak to each other in dialogue on whatever the topic was brought up. And after that, it's going to be a Q&A segment with an audience calling for 10 minutes. So it's going to be 5 minutes, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 10 minutes. All right, so opening statement, response, dialogue, then public Q&A. All right, so it's going to be pretty, basic format. And it's a quick, format, and also allows the audience to chime in a little bit more. So, again, if you have any questions, audience, you can press number 1 right now. Or if you know you're going to have a question, you can press number 1 right now and stand by when we get to that public Q&A segment. That's going to be 10 minutes each particular topic. All right, so, of course, we're going to start off with Mayanah. Everybody knows for the first time, it's your first time on the platform. You're going to have to start off as far as debating in the Lions Den. So we're going to start off with Mayanah. Let me open up the phone line. Then we'll set up the timer, and you can go ahead, Mayanah.
All praises to the Holy One of Yisrael. May he go before us as so that all things be to his glory and the edification of his people. Greetings, Sal, Jean, and the listening audience. Power tends to corrupt, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. These were the reflections of John Action, Italian historian and moralist. But this conclusion of corruption did not seem to discourage Action, because he goes on to say, great men are almost always bad men. Action appears to imply that to be a great man, it is understandable to be a bad man. This is contrary to our Hebrew wisdom. Our leaders are not to be corrupt, and the concept of an absolute necessitates an imbalance. Hebrew wisdom states just weights and balances are his delight. False balance is an abomination. The removal of the feminine principle from these conversations creates a false balance. The absence of context also lends itself to a false balance. The phenomenology of polygyny has become one of the chief culprits in this imbalance and the extraction of context. This is because context is the enemy of propaganda, reality, truth, and all of these things. So very often this marriage strategy is stripped of context in order to make it more appealing or palatable. But this debate will differ from the discussions of its kits in that we will insist on context. To begin this conversation, being seated in Torah, I will use, and will not be moved from, the Torah concept of sin. The word sin in Hebrew is chata, and it means to miss the mark. I'll repeat that, because this Torah definition is the only one we need to know as Hebrews. The Hebrew for sin is chata, and it means to miss the mark. During the course of this debate, if past conversations are any indication, much ado will be made of is it a sin, is it unlawful, and the appeal to past precedents and possibly burden of proof. With regard to sin, I am disinclined to wait until Hebrews in the Hellenistic era have thoughts on this and count only Torah as the authority on such things. To continue, there is no law commanding this act. It is therefore not full of any law, which likewise precludes the false dilemma of is it unlawful, as this was never a matter of law to begin with. Additionally, exhuming the ancestors and parading them through the conversation in an appeal to past precedents and perhaps an appeal to authority will not have the intended intimidating effect, because Hebrews should not have the heathenistic affectation of ancestor worship. Hebrews only worship the true and living power. Consequently, we have no problem stating that any of them missed the mark in their lifetime. Furthermore, with regard to the burden of proof, I will take the position that on the instance that the Creator determined that something was not good, He provided one remedy: monogamy. If Gene disagrees, I have only to prove that he gave that remedy. If he suggests that a change happened and his remedy changed, then the burden of proof shifts organically to him. Finally, I predict that Gene, like others, will attempt an appeal to patriarchy. However, I caution the audience not to be deceived. What he and other polygynists like him are espousing is androcentricity, meaning centering around the man, and in some cases phallocentricity. I will be the first to assert that ours is a patriarchal culture. Indeed, we are patriarchal, patrilineal, and patrilocal, but we are not androcentric, we are not androfocal, and we are not phallocentric. When the conversation moves from what our Father has prescribed for us and pleasing Him into areas of what is pleasing to man or men, then we have indeed stumbled upon a thought that misses the mark. So the question necessarily becomes, and I submit to Gene, what is the intentionality driving the reclamation of polygyny in this contemporary context? And with that, I yield the floor.
All right, so that was Mayanah with her opening for this particular debate. And I see more and more people calling in. We definitely appreciate y'all. By the way, I forgot to mention, once we get to the 2-minute mark of your time, you're going to hear this sound. That means there's 2 minutes left of your time. All right, so let's go to Brother Gene with his response. Gene, you can go ahead.
Hey, well, they're pretty words. I'm a pretty simple man. I'm not as well at probably, fancy words like she all put out. Maybe she's a little smarter in that area, but I'm a really simple man. I wish that she had requested that, or I asked if I could even bring Dr. Luck along, because he's kind of the master at this, and with her education and background and stuff. But I think she kind of made the point altogether. we had talked previous, and I asked her if polygyny was a sin. Pretty simple question, and she, as far as I understood, kind of failed to say yes, it's sin. So, if it's not sin, then we have to ask situationally, is it okay for me to do? Because not all, things that are not always sinful aren't always expedient. It's not always a good idea. So it's circumstantial. It's in the circumstance, not necessarily, in the issue of sin. She brought it up. Sin. Missed the mark. So, will we talk about sin? I would hope so, because if it's not an issue of sin and righteousness, then what's the point? If she says that it's based on situation, okay, so it's based on situation. So there's still a standard for situations. That, as far as commanding anybody to get polygynous, no, I don't believe that anybody commanded anyone to be polygynous. If you want to be monogamous, you want to be celibate, go right ahead. There's no law against it either way. There are laws against things, and I'll refer to John chapter 1, or 1 John chapter 3, verse 4. It says, depending on what translation you read, everyone that sins breaks the law. In fact, sin is lawlessness. The very definition, I don't know if she was mocking the idea that God actually calls sin lawlessness. So either the Bible's right about that, or we misunderstand sin now. So, and if she's going to use the miss the mark God standard, how God developed everything, well, there's a difference in God's word between what's prescriptive, what's commanded, what's expected, I wouldn't say expected, but commanded, and descriptive, things that it's talked about. It's what God did or what someone else did. It's descriptive. So is God commanding polygyny? No. In fact, I've even recommended men not get into polygyny for certain reasons and whatever. So I don't really think that either. Again, the reason we're trying to ask if it's a sin, we've got to determine whether or not it is a sin. If it's a sin, then don't do it. You're a moron or just evil if you do it, and it's sin. Now, if it's not sin, then we can ask, is it a good situation? And I've counseled many men not to get into it because the situation wasn't good. So, help me out here. Either it's sin or it's not. Define it for me. I think 1 John 3:4 has defined it. You want to help me out here?
All right, so now we go into the dialogue session where they're going to speak to each other and ask you the questions and, and interact with each other now for 10 minutes. And after that, we're going to open up the phone lines to the audience out there for 10 minutes as well. So if you have a question or comment, people, you can just press number 1 right now and stand by for the Q&A segment. Or if not, we'll just move on and have, just keep going on with the format for the debate. All right, so let me open up their phone lines. Let's start off with Mayanah. You can go ahead and ask him his questions, or you want to dialogue ahead.
Well, it seems as if he has a lot of commentary on my presentation, but failed to answer the question. The question that I asked him spoke to intentionality, the intentionality of reviving this polygynous thought in contemporary context. I was very clear on my question to him, and I understand that maybe he didn't prepare for responding to that. So maybe in this part of the conversation he can revisit the conversation that we're actually having. With regard to sin, I think that I was also very clear that we're dealing with polygyny, which is a Torah concept, and I don't think that it's too much of a burden to remain in a Torah context to discuss it. So while I appreciate that he jumped into his Zemeckis getaway car and ran all the way to John, Torah already gave us the basis. We don't really need John's reflections on what Torah has already established, and it is to miss the mark. Obviously, within missing the mark, if you go left or right of the law, you also accomplish missing the mark. But there's just the totality of the idea is if you do something, and it is, again, to the left or to the right of what is intended or prescribed for us. He said something about can we do it or if we can do it. Understand, let's go back to Ecclesiastes. Ecclesiastes 12:13 tells us what we are allowed to do. The whole duty of man is to what? To fear him and to keep his commandments. So this discussion about, there's no commandment, or can we talk about it, the command, okay, this is what we're supposed to do. This is the totality of what we are to do. The whole duty of man is to fear him and to keep that which is commanded. That's it. So everything else we're doing, this is all this marginal fringe conversation that we're having. Do we want to go and theorize it to death? I'll take this train with you if we must. But I think that is clear, that we have to keep his commandments. Everything else is androcentricity. This is why I took the time to define androcentricity in my opening. It means that we are centering on what man is doing. We are no longer concerned with the duty that the Creator has put for us, and instead we want to discuss what men have done. Gene said that we would look at what the Creator had done, and then he, bundled that with what men do. The things that men do are not the same as what the Creator has done, and I think that one is a weightier matter. And for me, the weightier matter would be that which the Creator has exemplified for us, and less so, again, the exhuming of the ancestors to parade and say, oh, look, Dawid did this, and, I'm going to speculate that Moshe did this. This is secondary. But, again, I will entertain it, but I would like very much to hear Gene's response to what intention, to what purpose, what is the intentionality behind this reclamation effort of polygyny in a contemporary context.
You asked me why people want to do polygyny?
What is the intention? I don't know. If that does that help?
Are you asking me to tell you what are you asking me?
So what is the intentionality behind the reclamation of polygyny in contemporary context?
Well, darling, there's a whole lot of intention.
Really?
I mean, there's guys that out there that get into polygyny just for the sex. Okay, there's guys that get into polygyny just for the power. There's guys that get into polygyny just for the sake of it. It seems cool to them. Okay, and I've had discussions with those type of people. Okay, so I cannot speak, and I don't think neither can you, the intentions of why a person gets into polygyny. Man doesn't make it right or wrong, sinful or righteous. That's for the Creator. Okay, so what their intentions and why they got in polygyny and why it's happening, could care less. My question is, when someone enters into polygyny, is it sin? Now, if you're going to enter into polygyny, you better have some good intentions. Okay, otherwise you're going to screw up some of your family, or not all of your family. And honestly, my progeny, my children, at the end of the day, I want to make sure that they walk away going, my family's amazing. All of my moms, I love them. All of my dad, I love my dad. He's a good man. Our family worked hard to make things the best they could. Okay? At the end of the day, I want to build up, godly progeny. And the thing is that you got done quoting the verse that says the whole thing of man is to fear him and keep his commandments. Right, but if you're violating his commandments by entering into polygyny, you're kind of not doing what you just got done saying we're supposed to be focused on. So are you asking me to give you the intention of men, or why men get into polygyny? Is that what your question was?
I asked you to describe the intentionalities behind them. You listed several. You said some of them are for sex, some of it's for power, some of it's just because they think it's cool. And that's a fair admission. I appreciate your candor. I appreciate you being honest about that, because very often you would find practicing polygynists deny that these are motivating factors for getting into this particular marriage strategy. That strategy that it is for sex,
there's a reality.
It is for power. Okay,
there's
well,
a reason
I appreciate you.
People get into monogamy.
One at a
for the
time,
same reason.
One at a time. One at a time, yeah.
So they get into monogamy for the same reason.
I think that sounds a bit like backpedaling. I think that you were honest when you said that it was for sex power and because it's cool.
Whoa. Back it up.
Oh,
No. You don't get to say I'm backpedaling.
I get to say I get to tell you my perception of your responses, and you don't get to dictate to me how I feel about what you said. You can say that's not your intention, but I can. Excuse me. I told you that yes, and that is my perception. I do believe that I'm entitled to have my perception. You can defend your position and say
I will.
I'm missing. Okay,
Trust
then
me.
do that, sir. Okay.
You ready?
By
I
me.
know guys that get married to a gal just because the girl looks good on his arm. I know guys that marry gals because they know that they can overpower them. I know guys that get married to gals just because the women got money.
Mm-hmm.
For a lot of different reasons.
Okay.
Whether it's monogamy or polygyny, the question still is at hand. If you can't do polygyny because it's immoral or against the law of Yah, then guess what? You shouldn't do it. Intention of man. Otherwise, you're talking about situational ethics, and you're not talking about the Word of God and the law of God and keeping His commands.
I think that I began with, number one, keeping our definition of sin in Torah. I think that I also provided the basis in response to your question, saying that the entire duty of man is to fear the Most High and to keep His commandments. What you in turn responded with is that there is no command for polygyny, so now we have to fumble together in the dark on this.
So you're saying the Apostle John didn't know anything about Torah when he wrote that sin is lawlessness and it's breaking the law of God. So John, who was around Jesus Christ, did not know what the Torah had to say about law and sin, but you do.
Rather than repeat myself, what I'll invite you to do is at the end of this conversation that you go back and check the time marker and see what I already said. Let's not reimagine the things that I have said. That's a waste of my time, your time, and the audience's time.
I'm just asking you, do you think you're smarter than John was when it came to the Torah?
I know what Torah says. I don't think that I have to go into competition with John. The Torah is clear. The Torah is explicit. And I did not do any of the things that you are now accusing me of. I don't feel the need to rehash a statement that I made very clearly, and even using the simple words you requested. So please, in the future, just pay attention to what I'm saying. Mm-hmm.
Right, or is he wrong?
Is he right or is he wrong about what?
In John, 1 John chapter 3,
mm-hmm.
It says, everyone who sins breaks the law. In fact, sin is lawlessness.
Mm-hmm.
Was he right? Was he right or was he wrong?
Well, obviously, if you break the law, you have missed the mark. What he has done is, okay, again, you did prepare me for the fact that you are a simple man, so I'll go back and try to approach this more simplistically. For example...
That was a little bit of a dig, wasn't it?
Okay, well, if you're done, is it my turn? Okay.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
Polygamy, for example, if we were to...
All right. Well, 10 minutes is up for that particular portion. Again, right now is the Q&A segment for the audience out there. If you have any questions so far, I know it's early in the debate, but if you have any questions, it's 10 minutes to you guys, 10 minutes right now for the audience out there. If you have any questions or comments, you know that number, 319-527-6239. Again, this is your time to ask any questions. All you got to do is press number 1. We'll add you in the conversation. The topic of this debate is polygyny, a man's right from the creator. My special guest is Gene versus Mayanah. Again, that number is 319-527-6239. All right, I don't see anybody else pressing number 1. Everybody's just listening to the show, so I guess we could continue with the segment. We're going to start off now with Gene for his 5 minutes. If you want to put his question on the table, this is his time, or, put a topic on the table, give him 5 minutes to do so. So let's go to Gene right now. Gene, go ahead.
You want me to ask a question?
Yeah, you can ask your question, and you have 5 minutes to, explain or elaborate on it. Go ahead.
Well, it just kind of, I don't know. It just seems to me that things that couldn't know what he was talking about when he was talking about sin, that she has a better definition or an additional definition. And I'm just sitting here going, okay, where is the law that is against? This is pretty basic stuff. Where is the law that's against it? If there's a law against it, you shouldn't do it. If there is no law for it, then we need to talk about situational issues. Okay? Like, for example, if you're getting married to another wife and you don't have enough money to support that other wife, should you do it? Good idea, bad idea. Some things are not immoral, but they are not expedient either, as the scriptures say. I know I'm going out of Torah, but anyway. So, and I personally did not say that I was going to stay in Torah. You did. Second of all, so either what the Word of God says about the New Testament is that it's an inspired word, or it's not. And if you want to disregard the New Testament, go ahead, but I hold them both in authority in my life. So, was John, here's the question, was John wrong when he said in 1 John 3, I'll read it from the King James if you want, whoever committeth sin transgresseth the law, for sin is a transgression of the law. I prefer King James, it's more poetic anyway. So, is he wrong? Go ahead.
All right, you still have more time. You want to give it up and let Mayanah answer that?
No, she can have it. She's a good talker.
I'll give it to her. All right, so Mayanah, you have 5 minutes to respond. Go ahead.
Okay. Well, thank you for that. Actually, in response to your repeated question, I will repeat my answer. Because Torah provides the basis and the definition for sin, and that definition is to miss the mark. Now, your question then seems a bit odd because you asked me then to consider the words of John, who says that if you do not follow the law, you have committed a sin, that transgression against the law is a sin. Now, you pose that to me as if it somehow is a competing idea with missing the mark. Obviously, if you transgress the law, you have missed the mark. So where are you imagining this contention between the definition provided by Torah and this kind of summary or piece that John is honing in on? Transgressing the law is one of the ways you miss the mark. So this is not a competing idea. So this weird competition that you are fabricating makes me a bit puzzled. I'm a bit puzzled. That's why you are creating this kind of unnecessary contention. Well, that's my answer to your question. So, I mean, unless we can agree that to sin is to miss the mark, which would obviously include transgression against the law. Also, this would miss the mark, and there is no competing idea there. And there is no reason to make much ado of it and kind of deal with this idea of command. Now, we've already agreed that there is no such command to do this, so I don't really understand the argument there either. If you're going to ask, I said earlier in my presentation, my opening comment, that because it isn't a question of law, it's not full of any law, it also precludes the false dilemma which you are trying to corner me into, this false dilemma of is it unlawful. It was never a matter of law to begin with. All we have now, all that is left, now that we have completely tabled law, all that is left is the desire of men. This is an androcentric proposition, so we have to treat it that way. We've already both agreed there is no law on this. So this is not an issue of law. Let's stop pretending that it is and admit and then go forward with this androcentric idea and discuss the intentionality and practicality of reviving this marriage strategy. We can go into dialogue.
Well, you still have more time.
Oh, how much time do I have?
All right. You have like about 2 minutes left. Mm-hmm.
No, let him go.
All right, cool. All right, so now we're going to go back to the dialogue session. Again, that's 10 minutes where they can speak to each other and interact. And after that, we're going to go back to the audience, 10 minutes for the audience to ask their questions. So we're going to start, of course, with Gene. Gene, you're going to open up the dialogue.
All right, so apology. I thought you were done talking. All right, so you're basically telling me, if I understand you correctly, that you do not believe that polygyny is against God's law. Yes or no?
What's the question? What I said, and I want you to understand that I believe what I'm saying, what I said is that polygyny is not an issue of law. Therefore, the question of is it lawful, that's not full of any law, or unlawful, is a false dilemma. We can go ahead and table the idea that we're dealing with law here and just kind of be very honest about the fact that we are dealing with a social construction, an androcentric social construction that is centered around the machinations of men. This is an androcentric conversation we are having. So let's just go ahead and have that.
Is homosexuality a sin?
Is it? Of course, homosexuality is a sin. Yes, homosexuality misses the mark.
Okay. Is polygyny a sin?
Yes, polygyny misses the mark.
Okay. So
Good.
then you're that's all I wanted was yes, it's a sin.
Well, that's not what you asked. You asked me. No, what you did was you asked me something about as it pertains to the law because you got into your getaway car and ran all the way to the New Testament to ask John what did he think. Let me finish.
You're running around in circles,
you asked
my dear.
me to speak. No, actually, I was very clear. I was very concise, and I have been unmovable on the definition that I have provided, which is sin, according to Torah, is missing the mark. You want to now have a conversation about law. Law is one piece and one method by which you can miss the mark, which is why you ran to go into your mailbag and find a letter from John to get this definition. I'm fine with that. But let me finish when I am speaking, sir. Allow me to finish when I am speaking, sir. So, when you asked me to clarify whether or not John's summation was correct, I said absolutely, because it is one of the ways one can miss the mark. However, I will not be cornered into John's synopsis of this when Torah doesn't limit it in that way. Okay. Now, with that, you can say whatever you would like to say.
All right. So, right now, you seem to me like you're kind of double-tongued, double-cheeking it here. But I want to get clarification, just in case you aren't. Okay. So can you give me an example of where someone is not breaking the law of God, but yet is breaking the law and sinning?
Sure.
Or, in a better question, how are they not breaking the law, but yet they're still sinning?
I'll give it to you. This is not hard. For example, this concept of missing the mark, the word sin actually appears in an example where Judah has appeared before Joseph, and he is negotiating to bring back his youngest brother. And he says that he has made an oath to his father that he would be a vouch for the safety of his youngest brother. And he said, "Do not cause me to do this sin and against his father." So he considered not being able to fulfill the promise of being able to bring his brother back. The word used there is sin. It's sin. The word there is sin. So this is not, there was no, if you can't fulfill a promise to your dad about your little brother, then you have committed this huge transgression against one of the commandments. Absolutely not. And yet Judah understood this as sin. The word sin is used in Torah, and I understand that perhaps Torah is an unfamiliar neighborhood for you, but Torah,
I wouldn't go there either.
I'm not finished speaking, but Torah is the basis for which all of this is happening. What we're talking, I need you to be aware of the neighborhood you are in right now. This is a Hebrew platform, and we are talking, and again, and I understand that due to your demographic, this may be unfamiliar to you, but this is not about you, sir. This is about the listening audience. This is about pursuing truth. This is about, and this is not about playing games of hermeneutics. This is about understanding Torah. You cannot divorce this conversation from Torah. It was very uncomfortable for me to hear you say that me bringing up Torah and saying that this is an immovable space for me was somehow troubling for you. If you want to go into the New Testament, I will take a ticket and follow you into the land of the New Testament. This is not a problem for me. But our definition, see, this is why I made such a big deal about context in the beginning. This idea of polygyny lives in a Torah context. So having a Torah conversation or having a Torah definition is intelligent. So it's for continuity and consistency. I can't imagine why you would object to that.
You have the same problem that most evangelicals have. Okay? You literally want to stay in the Old Testament and Torah. Wow, what was that?
No, I didn't say. I told you. I deliberately and specifically, explicitly, for all of Radio Land to hear, say that if you insist on going into the New Testament, I will follow you there. It's not an issue for me to go into the New Testament.
The big sigh,
however,
though. I mean, really?
I'm sorry. What is the question?
The big sigh that you had. Let me explain something. So you have the same problem that evangelicals have. Okay. And then one thing that I think most evangelicals could learn from Hebrew Israelites, which is the love of the Torah, but there's also the New Testament. Okay? And those are either they're not God's words, as God says they are, put through the pen of man. So they are inspired words or they're not inspired words. And if they are inspired words, they're from God. Okay? Second of all, I'm not done
think
yet
what
either.
Okay, by all means.
We want to play this. We can play it both ways.
By all means.
So here's the other thing: is you just got done telling in your opening statement about ancestor worship.
Correct.
But you just got done telling everybody here that you're defining sin because of what one of the brothers said.
What brother?
But the brother doesn't define what sin is. Okay? Now, he might think it's a sin. He might think it's a sin, but you have. I'm asking you where you said immediately to me that there is no law against it. Okay? So now either we're dealing with situational ethics, okay, or we're not. Do you think that of loving my wives and loving my children and growing them in the admonition of the Lord, do you think I'm living in sin? If so, please show me the law. Otherwise, you're done.
Well, here's the problem with what you are saying. There's so many, so I'll take my time with them. Number one, you asked me for an example of when something was called sin but wasn't in transgression of the law. So it's not that I used Judah to define sin. You asked for an example and you received it, and now you seem a little bit upset about that.
I'm not upset.
Well, then allow me to.
There's 2 minutes left. Go ahead. 2 minutes left.
Oh, and second, you keep going back to this concept of I have said that there is no law against it. What I said, to be accurate, what I said is there's no law on it, period, and therefore it precludes the false dilemma, the false dichotomy, the fallacy in logic that I now have to prove that or discuss whether it's unlawful when it's not full of any law to begin with. This is not a matter of law because it is not a command. We already established that the whole duty of man is to fear the Creator and to keep His commandments. What you have said is that there is no such command. So we do not have to continue to pretend or mask it as an issue of law when it very clearly is not. This is an androcentric matter. Let's keep it in this context.
So you told me in our conversation previous that if it came from the Creator, then it was righteous, correct?
I said that all things. No. Did I say that? I don't think that's what I said. But what of it?
I remember.
I don't think that you do. You barely remember what we said in this conversation.
Oh, thanks for the dig. Boom. Nicely done.
Wow.
Now you ready again?
Oh, that was just a
thanks
fact.
for the other dig. Boom. Nicely done.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so let's try it again.
Mm-hmm.
So, what do you think?
What do I think about what? You haven't articulated
If it
thought.
comes from God, can it ever be sin?
If the Creator commands it, it cannot be a sin.
Okay.
Okay.
So if the Creator...
All right. Unfortunately, 10 minutes is up, so now we have to go to the Q&A segment again. Once again, listen to the audience. This is your time. If you have any questions so far here in this debate, we have a lot more debate, a lot more time. But so far, this portion of the debate, if you have any questions, the audience have 10 minutes to call in and chime in. And then, of course, later on, we'll come back to you guys and, get some of your questions. But we do have some people standing by. So let's open up the phone lines. Again, it's going to be a 10-minute segment. Let's go to 678-672. You're live in the air. Do you have any questions for special guests on the panel? 678-672. Can you hear me? Hello? You sound kind of low there. 678. All right. You know what? Let me just come back to you. Yeah, somebody else on the phone line. Let's go to 615-688. You're live in the air. You have any questions?
Shalom, Sal. Pastor Dow here. Appreciate the debate. Appreciate the discussion on both parties.
Hey, what's going on, Pastor Dow? How are you doing?
Everything's going right. Going pretty well. Enjoying the discussion here. Statement and question. To me, the debate is a nonsensical form anyway, because the sister divorces herself from Torah when she says that it is sin, yet she cannot give the condemnation or the part where it's actually missing the mark. I hear a lot of theological rhetoric and a lot of personal visceral condemnation of Yah's way, but yet if a man having multiple wives or polygyny is missing the mark, then where's the one scripture that clearly states a man having multiple wives has sinned or missed the mark? Now, where is the regulation that the Most High Yah actually has spoken and regulated this through the prophet and the custodian of the law, Moshe? Over in Deuteronomy or Devarim 25:5, there's the law of the Levirate. In the Levirate, Yah not only regulates it, but he also commands it. It's not even based on the status of the brother. It's based on his law actually raising up seed to the deceased brother. So I would like for the sister to be able to answer that question and answer it with clarity without running from it and without tap dancing around it, because we know that the word says foolish and unlearned questions avoid because they do gender strife. And that's the reason why from the beginning I stated that it's a nonsensical debate, because she's running from the actual Torah in itself. And this is Pastor Dow, Hebrew Israelite. Shalom.
All right, Mayanah, you can respond.
Oh, Pastor Dow, thank you so much for that question. And I've enjoyed some of your videos, by the way. To answer your question, particularly where you brought up the levirate, that was a great point. It is true that the status, in terms of the marital status of the brother, is not considered as part of the mandatory or the prescribed expectation that he will raise up seed for his brother. What you neglected to add in that is that because it is a law and it is something that the Most High has prescribed, there's also an exit clause, which means that he does not have to fulfill that. If he can opt out of it. We actually have a working case law where the Redeemer kin does opt out of it, and he cites the fact that it would complicate his own inheritance as why he is opting out of this. And it's in the law that he is permitted to do so. So in the one place, so one of the few places where you could potentially argue that polygyny will be the consequence of a law, obviously not the intention of the law, which is why I discussed intentionality earlier, but the consequence of the law, the Redeemer can opt out. And all the other attacks on my person, I'll just decline to respond to.
Yeah, you still there, Pastor Dow? You want to respond?
Yes, sir. Can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you loud and clear. Loud and clear.
Oh, okay. Well, good. Again, good. You know, here's a professional tap dancing situation, and she is speaking with a forked tongue. Because one minute she agrees that there's a law there, then the next minute she totally divorces herself and run away from the actual reality. The law never stated in there if it was this man's choice or not to do it. As a matter of fact, the law was clear cut. It was not his choice. It was already written and prescribed for the Israelites to actually do the actual levirate law. And, of course, we saw a judgment with someone who actually did not want to do the Israelite law whenever Onan decided to spill his seed upon the ground and not raise up seed to his brother. And so the Most High Yah judged swiftly and bare sheet in that question, in that answer, in that aspect. So what we need to do is stay direct for what the book says and not create questions that gender strife, not come up with foolish statements that has nothing to do with the Bible at all. People are forming questions, forming statements, and forming all of these particular, I call it theological rhetoric questions that has nothing to do with the Bible at all. It's just for strife, argument, and contention simply because they hold a personal visceral against the way of Yah.
Okay. Well, unfortunately for you, I have answered you directly. I tap danced over nothing. No matter how many times you attempt to insist that I did, the fact remains that the law you referred to does indeed allow for the Redeemer kin to not take the widow. And if there's a penalty, it's very clearly delineated to anyone who has read Torah will know that I have not avoided the question, that I am in fact correct on the way and the execution of this law. The woman who is not received by the Redeemer kin, the closest Redeemer kin, who has rejected her and this responsibility, she is to loose his shoe and spit in his face and say in front of the elders and say, such is done to the man who will not raise up seed for his brother. So obviously I have not avoided the question, neither have I tap danced anywhere or did the jig or shimmied or any other type of dance you may want to accuse me of. In fact, I'm correct on this law. And there is a case law in the Book of Ruth, which basically does nothing else but address the widow's rights and the levirate, where a Redeemer kin does precisely that. The redeeming kin does not take Ruth and instead defers that right in response to he completely avoids with the reason that it would complicate his own inheritance. That is his stated reason for not taking the widow, and that is how Boaz gets Ruth, because the original Redeemer kin does not participate in the levirate. Again, this, as far as deliberate and intentional and agenda, this sounds like you just have a problem with the fact that I am presenting another vantage point and that your entire reason for calling is personal. I have not gone contrary to Torah. In fact, I'm staying in Torah. I'm dealing with Torah law, unless you can prove in any way that the Redeemer Ken and Ruth actually took her and Boaz didn't. If you're going to prove that the law of the levirate does not say that if he chooses not to participate in the levirate, that she is to loose his shoe and spit in his face. Unless you say I made all of that up in my dancing and my jigging and doing all of these shimmying that you are accusing me of.
All right, time is almost up for this particular portion. Let's go to another question real quick. Let's go to 678-672. You have a question or a comment? 678-672.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes,
loud and clear.
Okay, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to be so loud. Okay, so first of all, I want to say that this is very insightful, and I think this was much needed, and I hope that you guys keep pushing it out and come to the truth, right? But one question that I really did have while listening was towards Mr. G, or I'm sorry if I didn't really catch your name.
His name is Gene. Gene. Mm-hmm.
Gene. Okay, great. If this is not how can I put it? In order for me to really get to really understand what you are saying, I kind of need a picture of you. Are you a European? Are you a quote unquote black man? Do you mind answering that question, please?
Well, my question is this, first and foremost, because unfortunately, and this is unfortunate, I've met a lot of people within the Hebrew Israelite community that are extremely racist towards white people. Okay? Ooh. And so, yeah, it's terrible. It was horrible. And, I appreciate the question, but I'm not sure what the... Well, no, I'm not even sure I'm not even sure what the reason is for the question. Because if whether I'm right or wrong is based on my color of my skin, well, then we've got another situation altogether.
It'll just give me a better understanding of who it is that I am listening to. I mean, it's just really either a yes or a no. If you would please help me with that, that'll be very helpful.
I'm not sure what matters.
To me.
I'm not sure what matters is what I'm asking.
I mean, if you can just be honest with me and the
I can
other
be honest
listeners,
with you. Unfortunately, that in this group, whether I'm a black man, white man, Puerto Rican, whatever, what is the bearing?
You see, it's hard for me to kind of like really take you serious right now if you're not able and willing and honest enough to just tell me if you're a European or if you are a quote unquote black man. I mean, I find it to be really simple.
You don't have to take me serious, hon. I mean, if I'm a black man, white man, Puerto Rican, it doesn't matter. You don't have to take me serious. The question is, what's coming out my mouth? Am I right or am I wrong? Am I valid or invalid?
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, is polygyny a man's right from the Creator? Topic of this debate. For those people that we said we have more people that called in, but we're going to get back to you guys later on. We have to continue with the format. And if you already asked the question, you can just press number 1 twice, and hopefully we can bring you back on if you already asked the question. But for those that didn't ask their questions, stand by. We're going to come back for the Q&A a little later on. So now let's go back to Mayanah, and she has 5 minutes to either expound on this particular topic or ask a question. 5 minutes. Yeah, Mayanah.
Thank you for that. I want to address the concern of the caller. I understand, and I want Gene to understand that the caller is reflecting on the fact that for us, this is a very intimate subject, and it impacts how we build our communities and how we receive one another. And so her concern has some very valid roots, and I understand them completely. But I would offer to the caller that Jean is making the point that we are going to, ostensibly, the purpose of this conversation is to allow the text to affirm or disagree with whatever our conclusions are going to be. So we want to form those conclusions based on what does the text say. From a Hebrew perspective, there are some concerns of whose interests are being represented here. Does Jean represent the interest of our community? And that's a valid concern. I don't want to discount that in any way. But I also would like for the sister not to tune out and not to hang up, but to stay on the line and allow us to kind of parse through what the text is saying. I'm interested in hearing Jean's defense of his position, and prayerfully he will remain in the text while doing so. And I would like all of us to be able to benefit from those thoughts, from that view. Having said all of that, there seems to be, and I want to address the concern of the first caller, that there's some kind of conflict between my adamancy in remaining in Torah and me objecting to polygyny as a biblical or whatever it is he thinks I'm objecting to. So let me clarify what my objection is. As I stated, maybe listening is not clear. What I stated was that it is not a command. And because it's not a command, it isn't a law. And because it isn't a law, it is not a matter of whether it is lawful or unlawful. This is a false dilemma. This is not me tap dancing. This is not me doing the hula. This is me staying in contact and refusing to be led about in all of these ways and these circular thoughts and having these theoretical conversations and sparring with hermeneutics. I'm saying this is what the text provides. And let's stay there. If there is no law, this is not a conversation about law. This is a conversation about what men have devised and what is the intentionality behind this structure. It's a marriage strategy. Now we have to figure out why this is a marriage strategy, to what purpose, and is it something that needs to be practiced in contemporary context? And if so, how and why? And that's what we're interrogating here. And there's no reason to be emotive in the response. Instead, let's remain intelligent, and let's remain righteous, and let's remain Torah-centered. And with that, I yield the floor.
Yeah, 2 minutes left. We got 2 minutes.
Oh, with that, all I want to do is to go and deal with the topic, as you repeated at the top of this, is we're dealing with the right of the man to do this. And if there's no law that is endowing the man with this right, and we believe that there is a right, then where is the right coming from? If it's not coming from a law, then where is it coming from? And so that's basically, let's redirect the conversation to the topic.
All right, so let's go back to Jean. Jean, you have 5 minutes to respond. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I'm going to tell you what race I am. I'm the same race as everybody else. My grandfather and grandmother were Adam and Eve. They started screwing up everything in the Garden of Eden. My intentions, as far as my intention concerned, I've given thousands of hours, not only to video editing and a few other things, but to get down to the bottom of what is best for the community that wishes to live polygyny. So my intentions are probably of the Most High. It is to be as godly as possible while living this lifestyle, because unfortunately in this country it's not the norm. And most people have problems with it anyway because they're not used to the norm. It's a social norm, and it's unfortunate, but they'll think more highly of a homosexual, lesbian couple. In fact, I think suicide is actually considered more moral than polygyny in society. But we're not really talking about society, are we? So we're talking about what God has to say about things. Second of all, what's interesting is you should have debated Pastor Dowell for sure, because he's a pretty smart little cookie. And he's part of the Hebrew Israelite community, and he's pretty smart, like him. But I thought was kind of interesting is that you have, really kind of puffed yourself up as a Torah girl. But yet the second that you want to prove that polygyny or the Torah was wrong in this circumstance or that circumstance, unless I'm wrong, the Torah is the first 5 books of the Bible. Correct me if I'm wrong. Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy is the Torah. Am I wrong about that, or am I right? That's my question. Am I wrong or right?
Okay.
Kind of need your help on this one here.
You still got time.
Well, I know that, but I'm asking a question. I mean, is the 5 books of the Bible, Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy, the Torah?
All right, let's jump into the dialogue session then. That's going to be 10 minutes. Mayanah, go ahead.
Oh, it seems that Sal had me muted. You didn't hear me respond several times that yes.
Sal likes to push those buttons, doesn't he?
Sal is keeping order by muting my phone. Yeah. I can't interrupt you while you are speaking.
To her, I think you are, Sal. Shame on you. Be nice to her.
No, Sal's keeping things in decency and in order. That's right. We have to have structure, and I appreciate order, and I appreciate Sal. So to answer your question now that you can hear me, absolutely, Torah is understood to be Deuteronomy, Numbers, Leviticus, Exodus, and Genesis. Having answered your question, is there a follow-up question?
Yeah, so you wanted to stick with Torah to prove your case, but you ran away from Torah to prove your case.
Did I? And that's an accusation. Huh? Can you back it up? That's quite the accusation. Can you back that up?
Well, you got done telling me I got into my car when I ran to 1 John 3:4. So you ran into your car to get the getaway. Well,
How?
You told me you're going to stay in Torah.
How? When did I do that? I hear your accusation. I'm asking you how. When I said that you ran away, I told you where you went. You went to John. Where did I go?
Did you go to Ruth to prove your point? Yes or no?
What I did was I went to Deuteronomy 25 first, and then I said there is case law. There's an example of it in Ruth. So I didn't run anywhere. What I did was I first began in Torah, like I said I would. Deuteronomy 25 is where you find the levirate marriage. You don't find it in Ruth. The prescription, which allows for the widow to unloose the shoe, this is also in Deuteronomy 25. The example of this in practical application is in Ruth. So I get that you have this zeal for trying to throw little daggers at me, and I appreciate your effort. However, you're wrong again. I did not run away from Torah. Neither did I, as Pastor Dow would say, tap dance anywhere. I said Torah.
Well, you sure
I stayed in Torah.
Sounds like you're doing the Tootsie right now.
Well, that's because you refuse to listen. You refuse to pay attention. You accused me of leaving Torah. I just proved to you that I was in Torah. I gave you the book. I gave you the chapter. Would you like the verses? It would be Deuteronomy 25, 5 through 10. And as you already established for yourself and for the listening audience, that Deuteronomy is Torah.
So let me make sure I understand what you're saying here. So you're saying because she can loose his shoes, spit in his face, he's pretty much relieved of his duty.
Correct.
Okay.
Would you like to hear it? I'll read it to you. Let me.
I would love for you to read it to me.
And I would love to accommodate you, sir. How about this? We're going to go to Deuteronomy. And what it says is, starting with, we can start from 5 where the levirate begins, but this is the portion that you seem to be curious about. It begins in 8. Then the elders of his city shall call him and speak to him. And if he persists, saying, I do not wish to take her, then his brother's wife shall go up unto him in the presence of the elders and pull off his sandal from his foot, spit in his face, and she shall say, so shall it be done to the man who does not build up his brother's house. 10. And the name of his house shall be called in Israel the house of him who has had his sandal pulled off. So we see that pulling off the sandal, being spat in the face, is a direct consequence of saying he will not do this thing. As the Redeemer kin, he is refusing his obligation. The elders go and ask him to confirm, are you sure this is what you want to say? And he repeats this declaration, and that follows the penalty, and he is relieved of that duty. And again, we see this in practical application in Ruth, where the Redeemer kin refuses to take her, citing that he's doing so because it will complicate his own inheritance. That is how the obligation moves from the original Redeemer kin to Boaz. This is, I think, Ruth has to be one of the most infamous of accounts in the Tanakh, and that account is based on this Torah law.
Done?
I proved my point. Yes, I'm done.
Okay, good. All right. So let me ask you another question since you got this verse down pretty good. What exactly is she saying, and what does it really mean for him and his house to be the one who's got his sandals pulled off? What does that mean? Is it like, I'm reading your contract, I'm spitting in your face so that you can walk away, no problems, no foul. You're good. So let me spit in your face, let me take off your sandal, you're good to go. Go, have a nice day. I appreciate your willingness to come up and let me know that you don't want me. And
well, what happened in Ruth? Are you asking me to add to Torah what's not written in Torah? Are you asking me to extrapolate it to
Deuteronomy 25. I'm asking on Deuteronomy 25, 5 through 10. What does it mean?
I just told you what it means. What it says. What you have gone on to ask me is what happens to the Redeemer kin, or does some punitive thing happen to the Redeemer kin after the 10th verse? Deuteronomy does not provide a punitive reaction to that, other than this thing happens publicly. He is publicly acknowledged as someone who refused to raise up seed for his brother. And then if you want, allow me to finish. If you want to look at what you're asking for is practical application. This is why I provided Ruth for you. When we go into Ruth, we see that Ruth originally believes that Boaz is the Redeemer kin. And when he says, I'm not, there's someone closer than me, someone who has this obligation that's not me, they go to him. And he says, I'm not going to do this. They will complicate my inheritance. We don't read any punitive thing happening to him there either. So if you want to, if you're asking me to write into the text what the text has not provided, sir, I'm not inclined to do so. But we see here that Ruth does not go with this man. We hear nothing about this man, nothing else happening to him, and Boaz successfully taking Ruth and raising up seed for Naomi. And that's it. So how you want to imagine that, or what else do you want to extrapolate from that? I don't know. I cannot. I'm not going to do any eisegesis for you.
Well, I can tell that.
Okay.
So let me explain what some authors have been very authors have talked about this verse. It is a curse because the man is literally trying to destroy Israel by not taking the command that he's supposed to do is to preserve Israel and their inheritance rights, and basically telling this gal, I don't care about you. I don't care that you are a daughter of Israel. I don't care. I want you. And here's the interesting thing.
Okay, that's a lot.
Well,
and I presume that although you say you're not a good student, that you're a great writer, because you wrote this whole fictional narrative that's not even implied by the text.
Are you kidding me?
Yeah, I'm actually not. Because allow me to finish, and I'll tell you why. I will tell you why I said that.
Hold on. Just let Gene finish up, and then you can get a response. Yeah, Gene.
Okay.
This is smarter people than you and I put together that talked about this verse. And the big fact here is it says of him. It's not talking about his domicile. about his family. The man, it seems, at least in this category, that this man's family is cursed. Second of all, Boaz, if you have two kinsman redeemers, one can opt out if the other one wants to take it, but it is not lawful for no one to take it. Otherwise, there will be a pronounced curse on their family. Now, if you want to bark at the history of that, go ahead, but smarter people than you and I put together who knew history, archaeology, and customs of the time, that's what it meant. Sorry.
Are you done? Is it my turn?
I'm done. Go, girl.
Okay. Don't apologize. Instead, just kind of stick to what the Torah says. You made the assumption, a rather creative assumption, that the Redeemer King has committed to destroying the house of Israel and said all of these things about the woman. But you fail to take into account that, number one, this is the law. So what you are kind of inferring is that there is some unrighteousness with the law and some unrighteousness with its construction, which is coming from the Creator. The Creator said this was what is to happen, and it allows for this option. And you're saying that this option that is allowed by the law has a counter-cultural consequence, which would mean that the Creator didn't think his thought through. Second, in practice, we find that what you are concerned about doesn't happen. Because with Ruth, when this person decides that although he was fine with inheriting all of the lands that came from Naomi's sons, when it came to being reminded that he would also have to take Ruth, this is when his objection arose, because he was fine. Because Boaz went to confirm with him,
All right, family, 10 minutes is up. Once again, today's show is entitled, Is Polygyny a Man's Right from the Creator? Again, this is the Q&A segment. Again, we give 10 minutes each segment for the audience out there to call in with their questions and their comments. If you're just catching the show, the number is 319-527-6239. Once you dial that number, simply press number 1 and let your voice be heard. Again, the only rule that I have is that there's no foul language. You got to keep it clean, keep it professional once you call into the show. Now, by the way, the chat room is officially open. If you want to type in your question and you don't want to call in, just go to the chat room or send me an email at debatetalkforyou@gmail.com. But let's go to the phone lines. Let's go to 321-614. You're live in air.
Hi, greetings and good evening, Brother Sal. This is the Mayanah Johnson, Sister Mayanah, Jean, who's on the panel. As a hostess, it's difficult because I'm like, man, can we get back to the topic? I don't mean to be funny, but, the topic is like from the beginning, and then it has gone into these other areas, and I understand that in debating we can lose sight of it, but I thought the topic was, is polygyny a man's right from the Creator? I know that the caller asked questions as it relates to the Kingsman Redeemer, but there's a lot of assumptions that are being made and these false dilemmas, as Sister Mayanah is speaking about, that the person is actually already married. That's a great assumption. These laws, when they come into practice, you have to look at the actual scenario. So in the case of Boaz, the text doesn't say he was already married. You understand what I'm saying? So we're making a whole lot of assumptions to insinuate that this means that if you are already married, then you have to take the woman. Secondly, I just wanted to, I think I just have some comments. I wanted to say that there's a bit of, in the debate, and I know it could get a little hairy in debate, but in the name calling, even for the caller and those on the panel, it's like if we keep it clean and keep it professional, we don't really have to go personal and name call one another because that kind of loses what it is that we're trying to get to. And lastly, I wanted to say that as it relates to the things that the Most High allows, because we're talking about rights here. I thought that's what the name of it is polygyny a man's right from the Creator. There's a lot of things that the Most High allowed that the Most High did not command. And this seems to be one of them. Another one will be kingship. The Most High never commanded a king. That was something, as Sister Mayanah is talking about, centered around the what man has brought up to the Most High, and then the Creator allowed it. And within that allowance comes certain things that shows you that if you deviate, you will miss the mark. Having a king in Israel was missing the mark. Samuel said it. Eating meat, even in the wilderness, was missing the mark because the Most High gave manna. So my question to Jean is, if we have these other two examples in the Torah that says originally you were not supposed to have a king, asking for a king was missing the mark. Originally, the original design in Genesis is a man and a woman, and now we're seeing other paradigms that have a woman, a man, and man. My question to you is, do you see the similarities between those allowances and this particular one that's on the table? And with that, thank you for letting me be heard. The mic is yours.
You can respond, Gene. Go ahead.
Did the caller ask a question?
Yeah.
Gene, let me ask you the question. Let me ask you the question again in case you missed it. The question is, there are a number of things in Torah that is an allowance. It's not necessarily a right. It's an allowance. These are things that people came up with, and then the Most High gave rules to govern them, one of which is kingship. The other one of which we see the example in the wilderness of wanting the meat, and we see the pre-Edenic diet and the post-Edenic diet. My question is, do you think polygyny falls in that category, as Sister Mayanah has asserted that this is an androcentric thought which is centered around the desires of man? Do you think polygyny falls in the category of kingship and dietary laws?
First, I want to remind you that God goes, hey, you want a king? No, you don't. Because if you do, bad things are going to happen. So I'm guessing that God didn't want them to have one, but they're like, if you're going to be stupid, I just want to forewarn you how bad it's going to be. So, and there are things, for example, that change with man but doesn't change with God. Let me remind you that in Malachi 3:6, it says, for I am the Lord, and do not change. Therefore, you sons of Jacob are not consumed. Okay? God doesn't change. But
Gene, can I ask the question again?
Oh, hold on to the question. Hold on to the question for a second, if you would, please. So, as far as man changed. Therefore, the dietary laws had to change. So, in fact, some of my studies on evolution and creation proved that the atmosphere changed. And there's a lot of things that changed with man after the sin, but God didn't change. And God's word is God's word. He doesn't violate his law. In fact, in Psalms 89:34, God says, I will not violate my covenant or alter what my lips have uttered. You know, God's righteousness is not something that changes. So go ahead and ask your question, by the way.
You didn't answer the question, Gene. The question was, does polygyny fall into the category, as you have just said, of what man has changed? That's the question, as it relates to the conversation. Polygyny, dietary law, kingship, are those akin in the way in which that it was the idea of man and not that of the Creator that created this institution?
Well, that's an interesting question. So God never said that a man came up with it. He never said that God came up with it. But we do see a law that commands it. And by the way, the quote-unquote, the non-specific, whether the man is married or not, is there because it doesn't matter if the man is married or not in the Levirate law. He is to be the kinsman redeemer. See, in Boaz, you didn't see anybody getting slapped in the face, taking their sandals off and spit in the face, because there was no violation of the law. There was a kinsman redeemer. And Boaz was not pronounced guilty and sinful because he took Ruth. Okay? So the reality of it is you can't say that man brought it up, and you can't say that God brought it up first, but we can see that God did command it one of the first instances we see God's, well, actually, Deuteronomy talks about getting another wife. He makes laws governing it, but this point where he actually commands it. So if he's governing it, and not saying, well, you're a sinful, rotten muck, and you're going to go to hell, and I'm pronouncing guilt on you, and again, on the other hand, he's going, all right, whether you're married or not, you're going to marry this woman, or your sandal's going to be pulled off, and you're going to spit in your face, and your entire house, your family, is cursed. Done. So walk me out of that one.
Okay, I'm gonna let, because I'm usually used to being host. I'm not today, so I'm just a caller. I'm gonna let everybody else come in. But for the sake of the question, I don't think you answered it sufficiently. You kind of,
Oh, my dear. Who made it?
Wait, hold on, Gene.
Hold on,
Gene.
Hold on. She has limited time.
You said that man, the Most High did not, or did. We clearly see within the text that it was man who introduced this thought, not the Creator. That is on record.
Where?
And so we're in the book of Genesis. The first time we see this thought is not introduced by the Creator. It is introduced by man. The Most High introduces a thought in the beginning, and it is not this thought of polygyny. That comes after. So if we're going to be honest, it's the same way in which we see that after in the Edenic experience and the expulsion from Eden, then we have this concept of eating meat, in which the Most High also gives way more laws about eating meat than he does polygamy. The point of the matter is as the sister said earlier, can we accept that this is something like many other things within the text that man has brought to the table, and the Creator is governing laws to deal with it? Because
so
outside of that,
Genesis 2:24.
No. What I'm saying to you is that it is clearly man who has introduced this thought, like so many other thoughts, and to pretend as though the Creator.
Actually.
Wait, hold on. To pretend as though this is something separate and apart from introducing the thought of kingship amongst Israel, introducing desire to even eat meat in the wilderness. They wanted to eat meat. That wasn't the Most High's thought, but the Most High said, give it to them. And my question is this another one of those just give it to them moments? That's it. And I relinquish to my brother Sal. I don't want to take up the whole question and answer.
You can respond, Gene. Yeah, you can respond.
Oh, wait, wow. Okay, so you're basically saying because Lamech was the first mention of this entire deal, okay, you're going to assume the hermeneutic principle of the principle of first mention, where because you think Lamech was bad, that polygyny is bad? Is that right?
Yeah, she's no longer on the phone line right now, but you can respond to that, and we're going to move on to the next caller. You want to?
Do we drop her?
Yeah. You can move. Yeah.
Oh, that's too bad.
You can expound on that.
All right, well,
All right.
I'll...
Let's move on to the next caller. We only have like a few minutes left before we go into the another 5-minute portion. So let's get another question here on the phone line. Let's see. Let's go to 315-565. You're live in the air. 315-565. You're live in the air. 315-565. Going once. 315-565. Going twice. All right, we're going to have to move on. Let's go to 443-939. Got a question for the panel?
Not a question, just a comment. Basically, just want to say I like the dialogue. From my perspective, I think Sister Mayanah is doing a better job of breaking the concept down, and that's all.
All right, let's go to the next caller real quick then. Let's go to 317-986. You're live in the air, 317-986. Got a question?
Yeah, this is Hezekiah. Hey, what's going on, Sal?
Hey, Hezekiah, what's happening, man? Long time no hear, brother.
Yeah, I know. I be listening to your shows. I just don't ever talk and whatnot. But I was listening to the conversation, and I think that like it's this whole situation is being made a lot harder than it really is. And the whole thing is, I guess my question would be, do you all believe that when you lay with the woman, then you are married? Because if you look at all the occasions where it's saying they lay together, it's saying they became his wife, or she became his wife, and she became his wife, and she became his wife. Every time it say, a lot of the time in the Bible it say when you lay with a woman. So I was just wondering, did either of the panelists believe that when you lay with a woman, you are married to that woman because you lay with her, or do y'all believe it's a marriage? It's like the ceremony as well as the consummation is marrying a woman. And I was just wondering what y'all thoughts was on that, and then they'll let me understand both of your positions as far as polygamy is concerned. So that's all I want to know.
All right, let's go to Mayanah. Yeah, Mayanah. Mm-hmm.
Well, thank you, brother, for the question, and thank you for tuning in. To answer your question regarding sex being the criteria for marriage, and all of the examples that you alluded to, in every single one of those instances, it's not an isolated act. If you want to take, for example, Rebecca coming to Isaac, there's something that precedes it. His father determines that it's time for him to marry. He sends his servant to go and retrieve the woman. The servant asks the question, what if she doesn't want to come? And he says, well, if she doesn't want to come, then you're relieved of your obligations. So he goes, and he goes with gifts that he first gives to her. Then he goes and meets with her father and asks for her father to approve of this union. The father gives his approval and asks if the daughter wants to go. And then the daughter goes, and then she goes to meet her intended. And then there's the in the tent, out of the tent. But very often that whole process gets conflated, and all you're told is, you see, in the tent, out the tent, wife. And so it's not so much that there's this idea that a ceremony per se has to occur, but there are steps. The Creator is not the author of confusion. The Creator is the author of order, right? And we are a dignified culture. We are a dignified nature. We do not nation. We do not hump our way into a holy convocation or a holy covenant. Instead, we do things in the spirit of propriety and maintaining our integrity. And so we see this exchange. We see week-long celebrations prior to consummation. Jacob is given a celebration. All the neighbors and the entire town is invited to this to witness. He gets, he's drinking and celebrating, and then that's the next thing you know, he's slept with the wrong sister. But the celebration happens. So all of these things are part and parcel of the marriage covenant. The families are involved. We have this idea that individuals make up the marriage, when the fact is that families are coming together when marriage in Hebraic thought is happening. So no, sir, it is not just because the man has presented his rod to the woman that, marriage has been formed. Instead, there's these conversations with the family, and this is other exchanges of his ability to provide are demonstrated. So if you want to know what Torah has outlined, this is what Torah has provided for us. That's my answer to the brother.
Let's go to Gene. Gene's going to answer the question. Go ahead.
So I've actually counseled many men on this issue. Actually, believe it or not, for this issue, my opponent and I are very much in agreement, except for the necessity of some of the things that there's not necessarily necessary. There are some things that are necessary. So first of all, sex is necessary to have to some degree to have a marriage covenant. I mean, you can have a marriage covenant and not have sex if it's a physical disability. You just can't, okay? And both have come in the covenant understanding that. But as far as overall concern, The wife has rights to marital rights, which is sex, food, and clothing. So these are rights that she is allowed. Okay, these are things that she has rights to. One of them is sexual intimacy. So I would say yes. If you have sex with someone, yes, that's a part of being married. But you can also have sex with somebody and it be fornication. Okay, so what makes the difference? You can have sex with somebody and it be rape. What makes the difference? It's something plus sex makes something. So if it's forced and it's sex, it's rape. If it's an uncovenanted sex, it's fornication. If it's covenanted sex, it's called marriage. Okay. Now, as far as the parties and the engagement period and going to your father, I think those are phenomenal things. One of the things that we're real big believers on is patriarchy. Okay, if you're doing things behind closed doors, possibly doing something wrong. Okay, possibly. So I would say that if you're thinking about living polygyny and you think just because you had sex with a woman, then therefore you're married, no, it could be you just fornicated. Stop it. It's against the law. Okay? Don't fornicate. Okay? It says that people who are sexual immoral are going to spend eternity in hell. Okay? And we're talking people that are unrepentant. That's the thought behind it is ongoing sexually immoral people. Okay? We all slip up. We all make mistakes. We repent. That's why we 1 John 1:9 confess our sins. He's faithful and just to forgive us of our sins and cleanse us from all unrighteousness. So to answer your question, sex is necessary, but it doesn't make it marriage. Okay, a covenant does, and you should be celebrating with a family. Unfortunately, this is the problem with polygyny in this country. You don't always get to do that because, your future wife's parents may think that you're living in sin or whatever the case may be, and make it real hard to family. And sometimes you have to concentrate on your immediate family, and not your extended family, because your immediate family is, separated themselves from you. And under those circumstances, there's nothing you can do. So I hear you, man. I hear you. But I think, if you're living polygyny, you need to live marriage 110% better than anybody else because you're getting judged twice as hard. For sure. For sure.
All right, so that is the Q&A segment. We're going to definitely come back. Like I said, every particular round, we'll come back to the people and get some of your questions. But let's go back now we're going to go to Gene. He'll ask 5 minutes once again. If you have 5 minutes, Gene, go ahead.
So anyway, I was thinking about Abraham and Hagar. And here is Abraham and Hagar, and they're married. She takes off. God says go back. Not only submit to your employer, but obviously that's her husband. Okay? So he didn't separate that family. On top of everything, I can't think of her name. It starts with a K. He had a third wife. Okay? And the math with the kids and everything doesn't work for him to go, well, Hagar left, his other wife died, so then he got married again. No, it didn't work that way, okay? The math doesn't work. If you do it, chart it out, it doesn't work, okay? So you've got God telling a woman who left her husband to go back to her husband and stop being a jerk to her employer and quit using the child as a form of antagonism. Because essentially, it was a blessing not only that Hagar should have been a blessing that Hagar gave to Sarah, but it was also a blessing that Sarah gave to Hagar. And she just treated her cruelly. It was just being a jerk. I don't know if that's a theological term or not, but being a jerk. So we have another instance where out of the mouth of God, okay, comes a word saying, go back to your polygamous husband. Go back to your employer. Submit to your employer. go back to your family. Unless you were assuming that, Abraham just had sex with her enough to have a baby and then they cut it off. Really? And then I love this one. People go, well, Abraham didn't have enough faith the first time and he listened to his wife Sarah. No, God didn't even say anything about whether he should take Hagar or not take Hagar the first time. He says, I'm just going to give you an heir. And then Sarah goes, here, have my handmaid. Oh, that's maybe how God's going to do it. God never belligered him for having a second wife. In fact, he even got a third wife. Okay? Never belligered him. But it wasn't until the second time that God said the heir is not going to come through Hagar, the slave woman. God was trying to prove a point. Also, limit his choices, by the way. Okay? The other woman, not as an inheritance, she was just bearing children as a concubine. Hagar bore a child for inheritance. Okay? So, as we see this whole process lived out, the heir to this whole promise, he gave one choice. You can choose God, or are you going to choose your son? And he chose God over his son, and he trusted God over the circumstance, like Adam was supposed to do. That's why. And here again, that may seem like you think I'm jumping through hoops, but if God gave Adam two wives, he go, she screwed up, God, strike her with lightning. I got another one. I got a backup. No, he gave him a choice. Are you going to choose the special gift I gave you over me? And he did. Abraham was the father of the fallen. Adam was the father of the fallen, where Abraham was the father of the faithful. And there is a comparison there. And if you missed that, go back. It's very, I'll tell you, when I saw it for the first time, I'm like, boy, I'm a doorknob. But that's the reality. Adam and Abraham both had the same choice and made different choices. And we see the consequences of both. Go ahead.
All right, Mayanah, you can respond.
Okay. I thank you for bringing up Abraham in all of the different ways in which this is erroneously represented. He made all of the predictable errors in interpretation of that. Let's speak about Abraham. Very often people want us to believe that they are pointing to Abraham and they want to emulate Abraham. They find some kind of thing that, we want to be like Father Abraham. Okay, Abraham married his niece. I don't see too many avuncular unions happening or anybody petitioning passionately to marry their nieces. Sarai did not give Hagar in her 30s or her 20s, not on her second day of marriage, second day, second week, second month, second year, second decade. 30 years had passed. She's 80 years old, and she doesn't believe she can bear children by nature anymore. So no one is saying, when my 80-year-old wife, who can no longer bear children through nature, I want to have a second wife come into it. That's just ostensible. The deeper problem is the misinterpretation of Torah. This whole idea that Hagar was a wife comes from the mouth of, or the words put into the mouth of Sarah, where Sarah said that she gave Hagar to wife to Abraham. That's the last time you see the word wife as it refers to Hagar. And what we need to know, what listening audience needs to know, is that in Hebrew, there is no distinction between the word woman and wife. So the translators are playing fast and loose with where they want to put wife here and decide that this is a wife moment. In terms of who's getting an heir, Sarah says, I need you to raise up heir for me, not for him, not for you, but for me. You are going to do this. She owns Hagar. She owns her labor, including her reproductive labor. And she's saying, instead of washing and cleaning, you are going to take on this responsibility that is unique to womanhood, which is giving birth. she has, in her mind, left bearing. She believes that the Most High has made that judgment against her. She can no longer bear children. And this is when she reaches for something else that she has. So without going into the fact that there's these cultural standards, that I'll deal with that during the talking portion, but he mentions that the angel comes, the Malak comes and has a conversation with Hagar, and he says, return to your master. But who is the master in that statement? He says, return to your mistress, Sarah. Not to this husband that you have imagined that in Abraham, but the person that has dominion over you is your mistress, Sarah. Now, I don't think that there'll be anyone to argue that you go under the authority of your husband if you are a wife. But this woman is under the authority of another woman. Then you want to argue, well, the Creator, maybe the Creator calls her a wife. He absolutely does not. When Sarah says that this woman will not have an heir with my son, and Abraham doesn't tell her, woman, shut up, you don't make any decisions in my house, he instead goes to inquire of the Lord and of the Creator. And the Most High says, heed the voice of your wife. Don't worry about your son or the handmaiden. So we don't have the Creator calling her a wife. We don't have the Malak calling her the wife. We don't have Sarah calling him the wife. In fact, when Sarah goes to complain, Abraham doesn't say, that's my wife, I'll deal with it. He said, that's your slave. Do what you want to do. So because I have time restrictions, I'll end it there, and we'll pick it up again in the dialogue portion.
All right, let's begin the dialogue portion. 10 minutes. Gene, go ahead, Gene.
Wow. So, let's go back.
Mm-hmm.
So, according to
Torah.
So, let's go back here. So, you're telling me that according to Scripture, according to Torah, my wife, if I'm going to live according to the Torah, if my wife and I can't have children, and she has some employees, and she goes, you know what, have sex with my employees so I can have a kid through them. But once the kid's done, that's it. We're good with that, right? So now, like I explained before, sex without covenant is fornication. Sex with covenant is a marriage. Across the board, throughout Torah, throughout the rest of the scriptures, that's the way it is. The way you just described it is, Hagar, Sarah just poured out Hagar and said, bear me a kid. I don't want you to have a covenant. But doesn't say God hates divorce? So if Hagar did have a covenant, if Hagar did have a covenant to have a kid, instead of having it through fornication, then we have a covenant there. Now, as far as God saying, let the child go, first of all, the child is like 14 years old, and an adult in that day and age. Okay, 13, 14 years old. Okay, second of all, the teenager, but the adult child at the time, was becoming aggressive towards the promise, the child of Sarah. Okay? And because of that, God says, listen, I will take care of Hagar. I will take care of the child, and you are released from your responsibility. God said, I will take care of them. Because in covenant, he is responsible to take care of them. Food, clothing, sexual rights. He is supposed to take care of their needs. Okay? God said he will take care of Hagar's needs, let her go. Okay? But he didn't say, you know what, your third wife, though, man, I'm telling you right now, you got to get rid of her as well because you're committing fornication. Because remember, sex without a covenant is fornication. And that is a sin, by the way. So, and then, what else I got here? So I can have sex with my wife's employees to have a kid. Oh, yeah, the child was me. All right, so I'm good there. Anything else I didn't cover? Anything else you'd like me to cover?
Is it my turn to speak?
Yeah, absolutely. Go ahead. Rock on.
Oh, okay. Well, you actually.
Dialogue,
Yeah, so actually you covered nothing, so don't worry, no worries, I'll cover it all. To be clear, Torah does not say that if your wife has an employee. We are not talking about an employee, we're talking about a slave. She owns this woman, she doesn't employ her. Second, because it was the 5-minute portion, I didn't expound. Due to the culture area that they lived into, we're not drawing on Torah here. There's no Torah commandment. We don't see this as a Torah thing that Sarai was drawing on when she opted this. What she had is we have what's the Nuzi tablets, and we have the Hammurabi Code, and both of these are documents that belong to the area that Hagar and Sarah and Abraham all resided in. And so these laws allowed for this, in some cases, encouraged or even obligated for the woman to do this thing so that there would be an heir in the household. We see that when Abraham is first told that this is going to happen, he laments that as it stood, his entire fortune would go to a steward. And there's no Hebrew law that talks about stewards. This idea that your property would be inherited by a steward is also part of the Hammurabi codes and expectations for the society that they had escaped into when they left their patriarchal beginnings. And so to say that, Torah says you can sleep with your wife's employees is obviously a gross simplification of what I said. In fact, I didn't say anything of that matter at all. Regards to Hagar was not a wife. But you continue to say, oh, well, these are the circumstances for why Sarai wanted her out of the house and why the Creator allowed for it. It doesn't change the fact that the Creator never acknowledges her as a wife. The Malak, as you stated before, did not call her a wife, even though you said that he did. He did not. There was never a point that anybody in the entire narrative calls this woman a wife. She is always consistently called the handmaiden. She never leaves that status. She's nothing but a handmaiden. And not a wife. She's never his wife. There is no polygyny there. And when she's left, if she had been a wife, divorce is allowed in the Torah. Divorce is allowed where we are in the context that we're talking about. And she did not receive a writ of divorce. She was only sent out of the house with bread and water, no less. And that's it. She did not have a writ of divorce. She was not given the rights of a wife. Neither was she severed as a wife. She was simply let go, as her master, which was Sarah, had wanted, and that the Creator enforced. So that we've clarified that, no? Okay, good.
You done?
Yes, I'm done.
Okay, good. So as far as the writ of divorce, that is for one man to present to another man, or, a man to present to a woman, here, you're legally able to marry some other man. And so that man says, hey, you've been married, you got kids, what's up here? They don't run around like they do nowadays where they got a bunch of kids and they've never been married. If you had a kid, you were married at one point, okay? That was the assumption. The writ of divorce was to prove that she could get married and that that the guy that was sleeping with the gal because he married the gal wasn't committing adultery, because the definition of adultery is based on the woman's marital status and not the man's. Period. Also, you got to remember Deuteronomy 21, 15, and 17. That if you have two wives, one beloved, one hated, and blah, 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 it goes through the inheritance stuff. That God gives laws. He doesn't give laws on how to be a homosexual. You kidding me? And plus, on top of it, you have a third wife.
Is there some reason that you have left the topic again? We're talking right now. Right now, you have made the assertion, and I'll follow you on these other, brain kind of spurts that you're on. Let's try not to have hermeneutical ADD and kind of stick here with Avi.
What would you like me to slow down for you for?
Well, I would like for you to sit in the mess that you made. I see what you're doing. You're trying to escape the fact that you've made quite a mess of this Abraham assertion, and you're trying to escape it by going into all these other places, and I'm simply not allowing you to do so.
Well, that's good. So Abraham had more than one
I was
wife.
still speaking.
In fact,
I was
he
still
had
speaking.
three.
I was still speaking. I was still speaking. You're being rude.
Good. I'm glad I'm being rude.
Oh, don't be glad. That's
Go.
terrible. So instead, what we have established here is that Hagar was not a wife. Before you want to go to all these other places, and I'll follow you there, we have established for the listening audience that Hagar was not his wife, was not even sent out of his house as a wife. All she received was bread and water and not a writ of divorcement, so she was not a wife. Otherwise, he kicked her out just kicked her out, which you're not allowed to do. Okay, so this if she's his wife. So clearly, the Malak does not call her a wife. The Creator does not call her a wife. Abraham, when given the opportunity to defend her, doesn't call her a wife. Instead, he calls her Sarai's servant. The Malak calls her Sarah's servant. The Creator says she's the handmaiden. Of whom? Sarah. So there's never a time where she's attached to Abraham. This is all from the imagination of the translator, who one time translates the word Isha as wife, when Isha could very easily have been translated as woman. And that's it. So we can.
He had sex with her.
Excuse me? We already established why he had sex with her. Sarah said that she needed an heir. And according to the Nuzi tablets, according to the Hammurabi Code, according to the laws that she had in her community at the time, those things afforded for her to have that option, so she offers it, and Abraham collects it. Now, let me point this out to you. Abraham, when Lot needed help, had 351 men born in his household, which means there is plentiful fertile women. He waits until
All right, 10 minutes is up. So now we go back to the Q&A portion where you, the listening audience, can call in. Again, we have 10 minutes per round. And after this, we're going to probably go maybe 2 more rounds. And after that, we're going to get some final statements from both special guests. Again, the show is archived. For those who don't know, the show is archived. You know, let's go back and go check it out. Go to the Blog Talk Radio website, which is www.blogtalkradio.com/debate talk for you. You go to the iTunes podcast. That's right, we're on iTunes. So go to the podcast section and type in Debate Talk for you in the search box and subscribe to the iTunes podcast. It's absolutely free and never miss another episode. Also, you go to the YouTube page and check out the archives later on if you missed any portion of the show. But right now is the Q&A segment. And again, you can just call in and then press number 1, and we'll add you in the conversation. Let your voice be heard. If you have any questions for the special guests, just press number 1 on the phone lines, and then we'll bring you back. We'll bring you in. Let's go to 702-806. You're live on air.
Yeah, hey, this is Bishop Isaiah. How you doing, Sal?
Hey, what's going on, my brother?
I'm good. I'm doing good. I'm a little confused. I kind of came in late on this debate. What I do understand is that Abraham was with Sarah when he realized that when he felt that he wasn't going to be able to have a baby, although the Most High said that he's going to grant him that prayer. He got with the other woman. I don't know whether the wife was involved, but the bottom line is he got with this other woman that produced Ishmael, and the Most High didn't understand why he took on another wife. He allowed it. So, I truly believe that the second woman that he was with was actually his wife. Now, again, in Scripture it says when a man lay down with a woman, that is his wife. Okay, so the one that produced that kid Ishmael, I truly believe that was Abraham's second wife. Now, I looked at the history of it. I read scriptures about it, and that's the conclusion I'm coming with, and it's all in Scripture. Now, once they did conceive and have a baby, and Ishmael started marking Isaac, that's when Ishmael had to go. Sarah wanted Ishmael out because what Ishmael was doing, and the Most High said, yeah, go ahead and toss him, but I'm going to allow Ishmael to have a great nation. That's why a lot of the Arabs are so wealthy today, because the Most High gave Ishmael a great nation. But I truly believe that that second woman, whoever her name was truly Abraham's wife, because the Most High said, why did he take on another wife? But he allowed it. He said, "I'm going to let." I said he was going to be able to conceive a baby with Sarah, but for some reason, why? Because of the age scenario, they didn't quite have the faith. So he got with another woman, and that was his wife, and Ishmael came about. That's the way I see it.
All right, let's go to Gene. Gene, you want to respond? Go ahead.
Well, I guess we make a couple assumptions. Either we want to believe that Abraham, the father of the faithful, one who was willing to sacrifice his own flesh and blood for the obedience to Yah, was 14 years as a whore. So he was having uncovenanted sex for 14 years. Or he was having uncovenanted sex once, using the woman to get a child, so God was kind of okay with sending back an employee who was basically fornicating with the father of the faithful to have a baby. And then we got the problem, that wasn't a big enough problem, to have Keturah, where it says in Genesis 25:1, married her. And they had 5, 6 kids? So I have a real tough time with, calling the father of the faithful a whore. And that's exactly, she can dance around with it all fancy words or not, but either there was sex with no covenant or there's sex with a covenant. If there was a covenant, that's called a marriage. Ta-da!
Let's go to Mayanah. Mayanah, you can respond.
Thank you for that. Caller, thank you for joining the conversation. I will dispense with all of the sardonic embellishments that my opponent has given and said and address your question. First, let's deal with Exodus 22:16, which I believe is what you're referring to when you say that when a man lays with a woman, that he surely endows her to be his wife. You will note in there that Exodus 22:16 does not say that once he has given her sex that she is his wife, but now he must make her his wife, and it follows that he now has to go to the father and do all of the other things that are necessary to create a covenant. The sex does not make a marriage. We see even with Dinah, the only daughter of Yaakov or Jacob, that when she had sex with Shechem, they were not married. This was sex that happened between them, and Shechem comes to establish a marriage after having done this act. Sex does not make marriage in any context at all. That's one. And I hear that you may have come into the conversation a bit late, so I don't mind recapping for you. There is absolutely no language where Hagar is called his wife. The only reason why this becomes a conversation is that a translator puts this thought in Sarah's mouth, that she says that Sarah is going to make Hagar, that she's going to give Hagar as to wife to Abraham. And this word wife, as I established, is Isha, and Isha means woman. The translator decided to make this wife. The way the Hebrew knows whether it's woman or wife is context. And what we see here is that Sarah goes on to say that she will make an heir for me, not for herself and not for Abraham, but for me. And when the Malach, when the angel goes to tell her who her master is, it's not Abraham, it's Sarah. When Sarah has a problem with Hagar, it is not Abraham that makes any decisions. He does not say, that's my wife, I'll deal with it. He says, that's your slave, do what you want to do. When the Creator refers to Hagar, he refers to her as a handmaiden. He does not ever say, I will take care of your wife. He said, I will take care of your son and the handmaiden, not your wife. This woman is never referred to as a wife. She is a means of production, reproduction to be precise. And that answers the question.
All right, we still have a few minutes left of this Q&A portion. Let's take another caller. Let's go to 315-565. You're live in air.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah, you're loud and clear.
All right. Shalom. Thank you for this insightful conversation. To my understanding, it is that either one or both of the panelists give authority to the New Testament. And so here's my question. In Romans 13, it says that every person is to be subject to the governing authorities. And my question is that since the government right now is the USA, and that currently it does not recognize polygyny as a valid form of a marriage, not saying that, it's a godly country, but we know that God sets up authorities and he brings them down. So while it is up, it is, to my understanding, that it does not recognize polygyny as a valid marriage covenant. So how can either one or both of you kind of resolve that issue of being in a polygamous or polygyny relationship while being a New Testament believer and not being under the laws of Israel, but being under the laws of the United States?
All right, let's go to Gene. Gene, go answer the question.
Hey, I appreciate this. This is actually a very good question. And yes, I do give credence to the New Testament. And before, you got to remember, I spent probably 2 years wrestling with all these topics before entering into another marriage. Okay? So, as far as the governing, what's your name, by the way, caller?
Ariel.
Ariel? I'm terrible with names.
Yes, Ariel.
Okay. So if the government banned preaching of God's word without a license, would you submit to that?
Well, that was kind of the part I didn't expound on. When Daniel was under the government of Babylon, he was set up as an official, and he obeyed the laws as an official. But when they banned him from praying, he did not do that because it violated the law. So my response to that is that we follow the laws as long as it does not come against the laws of the Most High. And as it was established previously, polygyny is not a law; it is an allowance governed by laws.
So, and I like what you had to say there. So the reality of it is, if it goes against God's law, then we need to violate the law of the government, right? I agree. So now with polygyny in Minnesota, now this is what I counsel a lot of men on, okay? Because there are some states that still, very few of them, but there are very few states, like I think 5 of them, that outlaw polygyny, okay? Mm-hmm. I tell them, listen, if you're living in those states, I'm a polygynist. I have multiple wives. I've had the sheriff come to my house with an investigation asking me where all my marriage licenses were. And I said, he asked me, first of all, are you married to multiple wives? I said, I am. He goes, where are all your marriage licenses? I can only find one. I said, well, I only have one. And then he shut his books, and I said, well, don't you have any more questions for me? He goes, nope. And he goes, if you only have one marriage license, we're fine. Well, wait a second. I have multiple wives. Isn't that considered bigamy? Not without a marriage license. It's considered an open relationship. So by the state law standards, if you're going by that, I'm not breaking the law. Second of all, I have to ask yourself this question, and this is just something you can ponder, after the debate, that if God has given you permission to marry, whether monogamously or polygynously, that's not on the table, just marry. The state says, I'm going to give you a license, a marriage license. What is a license? It is a permission to do what was once before illegal to do without it. I'm kind of pretty sure that God, A, doesn't require a license for us to get married, okay? And second of all, it is now asking the state's permission for marriage instead of maybe the father, which would be more patriarchal, or even having a covenant between that woman and yourself and God. So I don't see anywhere in Scripture, in fact, I probably can make a fairly decent case against marriage licenses, and even though I have one, we want to get out of it, because I don't like the fact that I actually had to ask the state for something. It's like asking the state for a license to pray. God's given me the right to do so, and it's a righteous thing. So if that's the case, I don't think I want to have to ask the state for permissions for something that God said I could already do. And honestly, I think that's kind of almost, and I might be flying off the handle just a little bit, it's a kind of idolatry, where the state now has become God. We've given God, and we see the problem with Christians who gave power to the state 150 years ago, because remember, God doesn't change what the state does. And now the state says, well, we now define marriage 150 years ago, and we think it's this, but 150 years later, now we're deciding it's something different, and now we're getting licenses to homosexuals and lesbian couples, and whether you believe in that stuff or not, you see the slippery slope is when we get into the marriage license issue, we deal with possibly ungodliness, and that's, like I said, something for you to kind of toss around later on. But God does talk about a certificate of divorce. And that certificate of divorce is basically saying, hey, listen, my ex-husband gave me this saying I can marry because if you marry me, you wouldn't actually be committing adultery.
All right, hold on. We got to let Mayanah do the time. Got to let her jump in. Mayanah, you can respond to the question.
Thank you for that, Sal. Thank you, caller, for joining the conversation. The question is, I agree, a great one. The example, I want to point to some of the things that Gene has provided. He mentioned that when confronted with the question, are you married to multiple women, and he gave the affirmative, he asked, do you have multiple certificates of marriage? And he said, no, I do not. And the officer no longer had an issue, not for any reason other than because he doesn't have two certificates, he's not married as far as they are concerned. They don't acknowledge the union. It's not that he got away with anything. It's that as far as the state that he resides in is concerned, without the certificate, he has not been married. And you'll notice here that I have used the word certificate where Gene has deliberately tried to turn you around with the word license. And I will give you the difference. And I don't know why. I think perhaps deliberately Gene is not giving you this definition. To get a license is the first step. You receive a license. The license does not give you permission to marry. Obviously, you can marry whomever. The license gives you permission to procure services, because what you do is you go to the court and you say, I have the intent of getting married. You receive a license. This license will expire. I believe that June has been married for some years. And if he had just the license, that license would have expired by now. He wouldn't have to worry about the mechanics of getting rid of it. Licenses expire. Certificates do not. The license allows you to procure services, to procure the minister. You can go to a facility and say, I'm planning to have a wedding, and you show them this license. The certificate is evidence that what you said you intended to do, you have done. The certificate says it's a certificate of completion, and your certificate does not expire. And all it says is that the thing you said you intended to do, you have done. And that goes on record. You are now officially have completed your intention. The license that applies intent, and it gives you the authority to procure services. It doesn't say the government has not, given you its blessing to marry. It just said, okay, well, you have the license to go ahead and procure services now. And the certificate gets signed by your witnesses, and it's essentially a receipt. It's proof of completion, it's a certificate of completion. That's all it is. And so what exactly are you railing against when you have the certificate of completion? This idea that there is no need for some kind of physical evidence that this covenant has exist is, again, countercultural. When we look at the Creator, in fact, let us look at the Ark of the Covenant. The Ark of the Covenant are the 10 Commandments, correct? We all agree? Okay, so the Ark of the Covenant has our 10 Commandments. The 10 Commandments is the covenant between the Creator and the nation of Israel. It's our covenant. Euphemistically, it is our marriage. These are our vows. This is what the Creator has put down. And what does it say? It says that He wrote it with His very finger. So our covenant, the covenant that is between the Creator and the nation of Israel, was written down with what? His very finger. This is what having a written covenant is about. So this aversion, this fear, this villainy about having this piece of paper, and then why? What is the actual concern? What this paper does is that it allows the woman to be protected when you are not there. I'll very quickly, because I know we have this thing with time. For example, I have to go to a university. I'm a member of a university. If I go to my university and I forget my ID, I can still have entrance because people there will vouch for me. I'm fairly protected there. But if I go to another university, they won't allow me in because I don't have anything that says I have the right to go into these spaces, even though every CUNY member is allowed to go into any other CUNY space with their ID. But you have to have something that when you're not in your homeland, which we are not, something else that protects you. When I leave the university that I belong to and go into another space, I need something that shows that I am safe and protected to be there. And no one's going to attack me or kick me out or get the armed guards to remove me from the premises because I have something that says I'm allowed to be here, that I have the credentials to occupy this space. What you do when you go and try to trivialize the certificate is you remove that level of security. Even with the flood, when the Most High said, "I'm going to make a covenant with Noah," it's not a oral deal. We have a rainbow. It's another physical, visible, everybody can see it covenant. It's not with a wink and a nod. This is madness.
All right, caller, you can respond real quick, and we got to move on. You can respond.
I think I had a question, but I kind of forgot it because my thoughts all over the place.
Well, we're going to come back to the Q&A segment. We have two more rounds. And after that, you're going to pretty much wrap it up. Let's go back to Mayanah. 5 minutes. Go ahead, Mayanah.
Okay. Well, I would like to go back to the topic, and not to say that all these other points were not interesting and not important, but the topic is also important. And so what we have established, and I think that we're all pretty clear on this, is that polygyny is not law. And because polygyny is not law, there's no question about whether it's full of the law or unlawful. This is it's not a matter of law. So since it's not a matter of law, it's a matter of some other type of convention. It is a matter of men instituting a process and it later being regulated because men have introduced the thought. And I don't see why why it's so problematic to just admit that this is something that men came up with and then be very honest about this is something that men want to do. And that if you believe that it's a righteous thing to do, if you believe that there's no reason to criticize it in this way, then there's no reason to try to tuck it in under some places in these crevices it doesn't belong. So if the man insists that this is a right that they have been endowed with, and we have already established that it's not a law, where does this right come from? What are we using as the basis for it? If it's a right, what are we using to verify or confirm that this is a right? Where is it coming from? It's clearly not coming from a law. We have all agreed that there is no law. And I'm repeating this because somehow that keeps getting lost in the conversation. There is no question. It is a false dilemma. It is a false dichotomy to argue whether or not it's unlawful when it's not full of any law to begin with. This is not an issue of law. This is an androcentricity. This is a thought that is centered around the actions and desires of man, and which, we can discuss whether or not this is okay. But to say that it is the right of the man, the question then becomes, from where? And with that, I yield the floor. I'm anxious to hear the responses.
All right, let's go to Gene. Gene, you can respond.
We're making closing statements or just statements?
No, you can respond to what she said. We got 2 more rounds to go. 2 more rounds.
Well, first of all, you don't go to jail for having a couple of certificates. So there is definitely a legal law license because I've been married for 20 years, and it's a license, marriage license. Now, whether it changes into a certificate, I'm sorry, you don't go to jail for a certificate or having multiple certificates. It doesn't make any sense. The fact of the matter is, getting a marriage license really just doesn't. I've already got permission from God. I don't need permission to pray. I don't need permission to pray. You can if it's not against God's law. And it's funny because she tells me to stay in Torah, or she's going to stay in Torah, but the second she wants to prove something against the law of Torah, she runs outside of Torah and mingles and mangles stuff like a car wreck. So, and I don't even know if she's acknowledging the New Testament at all as any kind of authority whatsoever. I'm not really sure how you say Torah is enough, but yet when pushed against the wall, Torah isn't enough for you. So either we can run to all different passages of Scripture to get a conglomerate of what God says is marriage as a whole, or we're going to stay with Torah. One of the two. Because if you run outside Torah, I get to do the same thing. And if you stick with Torah, your case is lost. And how many times have you said you don't believe that John was wrong when he said sin is a violation of the law? We show you the law, but you say it's the case law, which I also showed you that your interpretation of that case law was in error. Because had it been wrong for him to allow another kinsman redeemer in the same line, then he would have got slapped in the face and blah, blah, blah. He didn't. There were two kinsman redeemers of that same thing, of the same tribe. So there was no law broken. So there was no unsandling and no spitting in anybody's face. So the reality of it is as far as a right, if you want to couch it in rights, I don't know how you're using rights. As far as rights, you have the right to die and go to hell. God says that the heart of man is deceitfully wicked. Above all else, who could know it? That's why God came in the flesh and bled and died so that we can have life. The only right we have is hell. Only right we have, because we are sinful, fallen, wicked. We have broken God's law again and again and again. And that brings me to the next point. How important is it to obey God's law? If you say I'm sinning, you say I'm breaking God's law. And if I'm breaking God's law, then I'm spitting in the face of the one who bled and died for me. But then you have the burden of proof, like you like to say that I have the burden of proof, but in reality, you just got done saying I'm doing something wrong, that I'm sinning. And that the thing that I'm doing right now is one of the reasons Christ went to the cross and bled and died and was tortured. So, is that the case? If it is, you need to show me the law or back away. And you say, well, it's not situationally good. That's for every family differently. I don't think any man has the right. He can do whatever he wants. In fact, some guys that have gotten into a monogamous covenant, and then, I got the right to be polygynous, so I'm going to. No, you have the right to keep the covenant you made with your first wife. And if it was a monogamous covenant, you better stay in that monogamous covenant. But if you were in a covenant that allowed for that, and your wife allowed for it, when she became a covenant wife with you, then you taking another wife isn't a problem. But if you were having a monogamous covenant, your wife said, no, she's not going to do it. You got to keep that contract. It's a contract. It's a law. Okay? It's a covenant. God says we need to keep our covenants. He's a covenant keeper. We see that in the Scripture. He doesn't violate his covenants. So, with that being said, the only thing you have a right to is die and go to hell. But thank God above, Yah, the great creator of the universe, who made a way so we would.
All right, so let's begin the dialogue session, and after that, the Q&A portion of the show, let's go to Mayanah. Dialogue session begins.
I think that it's really interesting how at every opportunity you attempt to reimagine the conversation that we're having. First, I've not ever left Torah. You made that accusation earlier in the conversation, and I soundly disproved it. Reiterating it doesn't make it any truer the second time around. When I spoke about the leveret is a law found in Deuteronomy. The consequence is also found in Deuteronomy. When I gave an example of Torah, which is obviously not leaving Torah, but edifying or adding or reifying Torah, I gave case law. And I showed that this is a working example of the Torah principle. And I don't know where you are imagining that something illegal happened in Ruth. I don't think I ever said that something unlawful. No, as a matter of fact, I'm positive. I never said that something unlawful happened in Ruth. Indeed, what I said was everything that happened in Ruth was lawful. When the Redeemer kin refused her, that was Torah. He was allowed to do so. His reason being it would complicate my own inheritance. That is what the original Redeemer kin said, and he declined. And then Boaz picked it up. And I said all of that was legal. I don't know why you are trying to reimagine that and make that fuzzy, so perhaps to confuse the listening audience, but I am not confused. Going also, I didn't interrupt you, sir.
I didn't know you could hear me.
When I asked about the rights, you have only said several times in your speech that you have no right. The only right you have is, in your estimation, to die and go to hell, of all places. That this is your right, and you go into these other unconnected kind of thought patterns. It made no sense, and it doesn't. There's no merit in trying to track those down. But in terms of sinning, the definition from Torah for sin is to miss the mark. And I did not limit it, but I did include. I said that what John said obviously falls within the range of missing the mark. Clearly, if you don't follow the law, you have missed the mark. I think that's pretty apparent, and there's no reason to argue it. That's why I would concede that point. But there are plenty of ways to miss the mark. And I think I don't know if this is deliberate or not, but you live in the state of Missouri. I want you to know that a license is not a 20-year-old license. It's a certificate that has not expired. Your license, I guarantee you that if you go to your state and ask about the validity of the license you applied to 20 years ago, they'll tell you that license would have expired if you had not completed the entire process. It's your certificate that states that you are married, not your license. Your license gives you the authority to procure services. I understand that perhaps you don't understand the law, and this is why you're conflating these two terms. I've heard many people do this, even going to the Black Law Dictionary and looking up the word license, but not looking up the word certificate. The certificate is the receipt. It is proof, a certificate of completion. That is what the certificate does. So, sir, you have a marriage certificate. Perhaps you should go look at it. It's probably, in the Midwest, it's a twofold thing, and the license and certificate are together. But the license is just one thing, and it's something you filled out, and then your certificate also has two signatures on it. And I just go and look at it. As a man, perhaps you're not paying attention to these documents, but that's what it says. Sisters that have, I am not finished. Sisters that have marriage licenses and certificates will be able to go and check this also, and it's there. So, sir, this idea of the license is not permission; it's authority. It gives you the authority to procure services. The certificate just simply is a certificate of completion, that you have completed the thing that you intended to do. That's all it is. And for the purposes of the legal wife, the wife that has a certificate, she has some protection in this land. You are talking about Torah, and you're talking about, this is a Torah principle, and people in Torah did it. Now, the government, the Torah people who were doing it, where they resided, there was a principle of elders that were going to advocate for this woman. Who was going to advocate for the woman that does not have a certificate? She cannot go and wave her motel receipt at anybody. Oh, I'm married to this right here. She can't do that. The wife with the motel receipt does not have the authority of the wife that has a certificate. That's just a fact. And, I'm not trying to belittle the union, your secondary union, but the fact is that one woman has more protection than the other. That is a fact, and you can theorize around that, and you can be offended at my saying so. But the fact remains, the police officers left your home because only one wife was recognized by them. You simply claimed the other woman. They didn't acknowledge your claim. So they said you were in no violation of the law because the law did not acknowledge the second union. That is why you were able to escape that. And I think that's what you're missing and you're misrepresenting to the audience. Now, the certificate, it does not trump a covenant between the covenantal acknowledgement of the Creator. Of course not. Of course not. However, the certificate does allow for the wife here to obtain certain securities. You cover her in that way. That's your responsibility to cover and protect her in every possible way. You have not put her in a Torah environment. You have her in this environment, and you are saying, well, tough cookies. I have no protection for you here. There's nobody here who's going to advocate for you. But you know what? I'm not going to do everything possible to protect you because I'm going to go and have this, faux moral stance. Faux what? As the sister pointed out, if it's not going contrary to Torah, what reason do you have for not covering this woman you claim to care about? What are you actually? Again, it goes back to intentionality.
You gotta let him.
Absolutely
You gotta let him respond.
I amazingly agree with you on this point, because you're not talking about the Bible. You're to some degree you're talking about the legal. You're taking protection of this woman. And I will say this much: my family has trust set up, and all these other things set up. That we've got the power of delegation set up. We've got custody papers signed. We've gone through the legal process. Oh my goodness! Yes, it would be easier for the state to recognize us legality-wise for a protection issue. But the fact of the matter is I'm not going to. They're literally going to send you to jail if you don't get a marriage license if you want a marriage certificate. Okay? You're not going to go to jail because you had a covenant with a woman and you decided to live that way before God. Okay? What the license does and what the certificate does, or however you want to claim it, is it gives them legal rights here that protect the woman and protect the man. And that should be absolutely, trust me, I know this all too well. This should be one of the things that is taught to men who want to become polygynists. If you don't have your legal side shored up, you're not that bright, okay? Or you haven't talked to someone who's living this life, and that needs to happen. But the problem is where I keep going back to this, it doesn't matter how short up you are legally in the state, the country, or the whatever. If it's a sin, it doesn't matter how short up legally you are. You still got to deal with the just judge of all the world. Okay, so that's what I'm dealing with. Yeah, I agree with you. If you're going to live this way, you should have legal protection for women and for men. Trust me, I've talked to a bunch who have had good men. Decent men. Women basically got involved. They have the kid and they scooted. So I agree with you. Protection for the men and the women legally needs to happen, or they don't have grounds to stand on. Okay? That should happen. There should be a contract for polygyny. If they're not going to grant you marriage licenses, then yeah, I think you should have some kind of legal protection involved, both for the woman and for the man. Now, as far as missing the mark, again, what's the mark? What are they aiming for? It's righteousness, holiness. It is before God. And guess what? The mark is God's perfect standard, the law. Be holy as I am holy. So missing the mark, he's talking about missing the mark. Missing the mark is sin, but missing the mark, listen, being lawless is sin. Period. That's the mark. God's holy standard is the mark. Oh, my goodness. So you can tap cancel all this all around, and you can run the case law, and you have bad case law. The reason I said that there was no taking off sandals and spitting in faces, because there was no law, there was no broken law there. If two kinsman redeemers from the same tribe want to marry this woman, and she
All right, family, 10 minutes is up. We got one more round. To go, but before that, we have to go to the Q&A segment. Again, this is where you listen to the audience is listening on social media, that's listening via phone or Skype, can ask your questions. You got this 10 minutes again, 10 minutes. And once again, we got one more round after that. We're going to pretty much get some final words. But this is your time. You have 10 minutes for the audience to finally chime in. You can press 1 or call in 319-527-6239 or send me an email. Email your question to me at debatetalkview@gmail.com. Let's go to the phone lines. Let's go to 832-245. You're live on air.
Hey, Brother Sal, this is Robert. I was just listening in. I wanted to say that it's a very good debate. I think Brother Gene is doing quite well. I think sister is doing quite well. But where I land on the subject is I've heard debates like this before, and I think what ends up happening when it comes to the subject of debate is that the whole thing begins to be redefined and put in a different light. I think those who come against polygyny, they come with different angles. They know that the Bible or the Scripture does not outright prohibit the practice thereof, so they have to redefine. It's similar to Brother Gene's debate when he was going against Brother Jason. Brother Jason, just like Sister Mayanah, forgive me if I'm getting your name wrong, very eloquent in speech, and they make it sound good. However, it has to be painted a different way. So to answer the question and to stay on topic, is it a man's right? Sure, yeah. I mean, yeah, it is a right. Now, she wanted to redefine and say, okay, it's not a law, so it's not a matter of being lawful or lawless. And then when Brother Gene pressed and said, okay, am I sinning? Then she says it is sin. But the Bible defined what sin is. But she didn't like the definition or didn't want to wholeheartedly embrace the definition found in John, in the book of John. So I think there is a level of deceit there where it's like, okay, is it lawful or not? Okay, that's really what it comes down to. But again, if we stand on that, it's going to come back to, well, that's not the title of the discussion here. So is it a right according to the Creator? Well, it is regulated. Okay, we understand that it is regulated in Torah of whether or not someone's going to do it. Does that mean that every man should do it, should practice it? Absolutely not, and I'm sure Brother Gene would agree with that. Not every man is able or equipped to do it. So does a single man has a right to think to himself, you know what, I think I want 2 wives? Sure, he can think that, and he can bring it to whichever woman willing to enter into that type of covenant. Okay, I mean, does he have a right to force it on someone? No, he doesn't. But if he thinks to himself, yeah, I think I want to do that, it does, and then he can go back to Torah to say, okay, if I do this, if I take 2 wives, am I sinning? And if he can't find a direct prohibition, then proceed if he's equipped to do that. I just think there's just a level of deception there when we have to redefine, put it in a different light, let's phrase it a different way. Is it his perfect will or his permissive will? And we do a whole lot of dancing around. We have to color it a different way because underneath it all is just someone who is against it, and they have to find a different way so that it looks wrong. And I just think that's a little bit deceptive. At the end of the day, without all the gymnastics, is it right or is it wrong? That's all I have to say. Thank you, Sal.
All right, let's let Mayanah respond. You can respond. Go ahead.
Oh, brother, thank you so much for that. I'm so glad that you said all of the things that you said. To begin, the idea that not going into the Hellenistic era to find the definition of sin and going to Torah, which is the beginning of where all Hebrews should be, for you to call that deceptive, I think falls into the line. Let me finish. So you are objecting to me not using a New Testament definition, but instead using a Torah principle that this you find deceptive. That's quite interesting to me. Second, it's what you said. Second, the fact that this idea becomes regulated again does not imply that it's not a law. If you steal something, when you steal something, it's regulated. If you steal this, you have to give compensation in this way. So that doesn't mean that the Most High sanctions theft just because it says if you do this, then you must do that. That doesn't mean that this is what the Creator wants you to do. So using the if-then scenario, again, lends itself to the deception that you're trying to put in my lap. In terms of gymnastics, the Pilates and calisthenics are certainly on the part of the caller. In certain polygynists, not all polygynists, I find some polygynists quite honest in their approach, because what I have stated, and this is a fact that you can't refute, and instead of calling me deceptive, I think you should be honest about the fact that this is not a law, which is all I have said. Unless you're going to say that it is a law and I'm being unfair and unjust, it is not a law. And since it is not a law, it cannot become a question of is it lawful or unlawful, because it's not a law. I'm not finished. It's not a law to begin with. What it is it's a construction. It is a fact. It is a feature. It is a custom. It is a tradition that the nation did. I acknowledge that. It is an androcentric construction that we did. I have never said that we didn't participate in it. What I asked is that if this is something that you want to do, for you to acknowledge the context of it, to say that it is androcentric, to say that it is a matter of custom and tradition, to go ahead and say that this custom and tradition had been regulated. You are looking for condemnation. You are asking me to give to you whatever it is that you are having a problem with. This idea of permissive will and whatever, perfect will. Do not bring to me the vestiges of previous conversations because you have not reconciled your problem with those. I didn't say anything about perfect will or permissive will. What I said was, if you are going to say that this is your right, or you're going to say that this is the perquisite of Israelite manhood, and we cannot say that it comes from a law, where does it come from? So instead of trying to attack me and use words like I am being deceptive, when what I am being is strategically and direct. What I'm being is direct. I'm not dealing with the fiction and the narrative and the creativity of men. I'm dealing with Torah. And if that offends you, sir, unfortunately you will have to remain offended. Because like I said from the beginning, I am not moving from the definition of Torah, not to visit John, Luke, Paul, Peter, none of them. Now, I said that we can talk about these things. I acknowledge John's definition. I will acknowledge the thoughts of Paul as well. But in terms of defining sin, Torah has done an exceptional job of doing so and does not need the assistance of John. And we can agree or we can disagree, but Torah does not need the assistance of Hellenistic reflection.
I call it, you can respond.
Yeah, well, one, I don't have a problem with reconciling previous debates or anything like that. Okay, what I am saying is the argument, the debate has been redefined multiple times, just like the definition. It's like, okay, you're saying, okay, I don't need John's definition. I just want missing the mark. Okay, I'll use the Torah definition, which is basically missing the mark. Okay, but at the same time, underneath the question or the title of this discussion, I don't know if it's a debate or a discussion. Underneath it begs the question. Okay, is the guy wrong? Because the question is it a man's right? Okay, and obviously you're on the side that says no, it's not a man's right to do it. Okay, a man came up with it. And man's just trying to do their own thing, and deep down in their heart, they just want to, have multiple women. Well, if you feel so negatively about it, then you are putting forth an indictment against many of the patriarchs whom you already know. I think at the end of the day, it's something that you, deep in your heart, think is wrong. You think it's wrong, which is fine. You think it's wrong. It's not a part of the Creator's will. He doesn't really want that and all that stuff. But you want us, or as men, to say to stand up and say, well, this is just something you really, really want. It just matters. It's not for every. I know many guys who say, you know what? Yeah, I think Torah does allow it, but it's not for me. So what does that say about them? Okay, so that's fine, and that's what I'm saying. You could see clearly that the Torah does not forbid it, but of course I know you're going to go back to, well, it's not a law, so that's not a question. It's just man-centric and all that. But at the same time, you were trying to assert, hey, why don't you guys just admit you just want multiple wives? This is something you want, not the Creator wants. No, I don't. I reject that. I reject that premise altogether.
It doesn't matter that you reject it. It's a fact. If we've already established that it's not a command. Okay, listen. If it's not, we have all agreed. There's no one who is going to be New Testament, Old Testament, Round Testament, Apocrypha, a Book of Enoch, Jubilees, or Joshua say that there is a law commanding polygyny. So if it's not a commandment, where does it come from? If the Creator doesn't command it, okay, who gave this option? Where did the option come from?
Is it not regulated? Yes
where?
Or no? Is it regulated?
Where is it an option? Don't change the question. You told me.
Is it regulated? Yes or no?
You just said changing the question was deceptive. Now, my question was, if it is not a command, and you are saying that it's an option, where did the option come from?
The option comes from Deuteronomy when it says, if a man takes another wife, and I'm sure you are familiar with the scripture. Or is it
yes,
Exodus?
I am. I'm also familiar with the scripture that says, if a man steals an ox. So you're telling me that it's an option to steal. Your logic says that because the law also says, if a man steals an ox,
why are you bringing up ox?
Because it's the same grammatical structure. You said if a man has another wife. This is clearly an implication that it is permissible because there is this if in front of it. I'm going to follow your train of thought and let's see if it bears out. If a man steals an ox, clearly by your reasoning, the if clause means that stealing the ox is an option.
No.
Well, why not? Well, why not? We have the if.
Because stealing,
the if is there.
Because thou shalt not steal.
But what's with the if? You're going to say thou shalt not steal. Then why don't you reconcile for me this if clause? It sounds exactly like the if clause you just gave me.
Because nowhere says thou shalt not take a wife at all.
Okay, well, if it says thou shalt not steal, then all the more peculiar is this if clause if you do steal. There's already a law on the book telling you absolutely under no conditions should you be stealing. And yet we have the law that says if you do. So if you transgress the law, really? So that makes more sense to you. And you're going to say that reconciles more. This is an easier reconciliation for you, this if clause about the ox against an honest, direct prohibition than this Deuteronomy if. Also, by the way, this Deuteronomy if, the context you find this if in is after a particular type of man, a warrior, has gone to war and come back with a captive, and this idea of the loved and the beloved. In context, of course, it's not convenient for you to bring in context, but context shows that before this if clause, there has been a war, and this is a captive, this matter of spoil, and then there's this discussion of if. So, again, this is not something. And again, I've said, and no one has disagreed, this is not a law. So this option is not from the Creator. The Creator is not saying you have this option. This idea is being regulated because men have introduced it. We see that when the kings are doing things, there's regulations there, but we were never supposed to have a king. When meat gets introduced to our diet, we weren't initially supposed to have meat, but this gets introduced because this thing has been introduced to us. So in terms of sin, though, missing the mark is still very clear. When we talk about these ideas of polygyny, what is the mark, and has the mark been missed in all of the examples? What is Dr. Luck says he's seen 40. I know what 40 he's talking of. Which one of these didn't miss the mark? Which one of these? What's going on here?
Yeah, actually, there's only like a few minutes left in the air, Mayanah, so we got to get to another caller. And what I'm going to do, we're getting close to the 11 o'clock what time. So what I want to do, we're going to pretty much get some final statements. I believe the information has been presented. It's been out there. And I always say to the people, make sure you go ahead and study the information that's presented on Debate Talk Free Radio, not just one side. Make sure you write down the information from both sides. And always go back and see information and show that self-approved. So we're going to take one more caller. Let's see. And after that, we're going to pretty much get some final words, final statements from this most special guest. And the classic debate, like I said, for the first time ever, male versus female debate. Let me know what you guys think. Send me an email, debatetalkyou@gmail.com. And let's go to the next caller real quick. Let's go to 702-202. You're live.
Thank you very much, Sal. Sorry. This is Akwete, and I have some questions for, is it Jean? Sorry if I got the name wrong.
Yeah, it's Jean.
Jean. It is
yeah,
Jean.
Mr. Jean. Okay. Thank you very much. I hope you don't mind that I ask you this question. If we can go back to Genesis 16, I think you were the one who brought it up, and my sister actually went to town on it. And she made some very, very important key statements. I don't know how familiar you are with the whole chapter, but can you see, or are you able to see that Sarah is never seen as Abraham's wife by Abraham himself, by the angel himself, if I can say that, and then we have God himself on record not calling Hagar Abraham's wife. Do you see that at all?
I see how you're making that implication, but that also would imply that Abraham is a fornicator. And then on top of everything else, that would make him a fornicator twice over because of his third wife they took. So is the third wife he took his wife? Because he obviously had sex more than once with her because he had 6 kids.
Sure, let's get back. The question is not about fornication. I'm not concerned about fornication. We can talk about whether that was fornication later. The question is, I'm focusing on the word wife. Why I'm asking is that we know that Sarah is Abraham's wife. We know that's the first time Abraham is introduced. Why is it that Genesis 16, we are told explicitly that now Sarai, Abraham's wife? Why do you think the text made sure it mentions that?
That's a great question.
Is the text? Go ahead. Sorry.
So, who did Hagar have a problem with?
Say it again. Who did Hagar have problem with?
Mm-hmm.
She had problem with her master, if I can say that. That is Sarah.
Her master, her employer. Because if she was just an all-out slave, couldn't do anything, she left. Okay, she left.
Correct.
But, there's 3 different types of slaves in the Old Testament. There's the indentured servant. Yeah, you sell yourself into slavery. You have to pay a debt, so you go into slavery. So it's another employment thing there. But you're indebted to that person for whatever reason. You're not working for yourself. Okay. The problem that Hagar had was with Sarah. In the context, she didn't have a problem with Abraham. Okay. And so you have to ask this bigger question: was Hagar ever his wife? Yes or no?
No, she was not.
Then Abraham and Hagar were both fornicators with the permission of Sarah. Now, let me ask you a second question. Was Keturah Abraham's wife?
Then I have to ask you, who do you think Keturah is?
Well, he fathered 5 or 6 kids with him.
Because tradition has it that Keturah was Hagar.
Yeah, but then...
And I can send you the sources, unless you can prove
question.
me wrong.
Oh, let's just say that was the case. So now Hagar has 6 kids. Now she's not just a one-time whore and fornicator. She's a 5- and 6-time whore, and so is Abraham. And so now we see an ongoing relationship with Abraham and Hagar. Not just a one, hey, I'm going to pop out a kid for Sarah for you. Now, if you want to go down that route, fine, but then you got a bigger problem. You just compounded the Hagar problem. So let's just say, for argument's sake, that was the case. Then we have Abraham on an ongoing basis in sexual sin if she was not his wife. And if he took a third wife, we see ongoing sin for Abraham. And so now we can pretty much expect when we get to heaven, Abraham in hell, based on one of the other passages, says that people who are sexually immoral, ongoing, as the text kind of indicates, the ongoing sexually immoral, will not inherit the kingdom of God. But yet we see Jesus, when they're talking about the afterlife with the scribes and Pharisees, they're like, well, is there a resurrection? He goes, well, who do you say God is? Is God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob? Is he the God of the living? Dead. And so they're assuming Abraham is living, he's in heaven, and he's alive. And with that statement, Jesus Christ diminished completely the debate, is there a resurrection, and proved that there was, because God is not the God of the dead, but of the living. So, and he put Abraham in line with that. So either God is turning a blind eye to a ongoing sexually immoral scum of the earth who is called the father of the faithful, or he didn't do anything wrong, and he was married to her, he did have a covenant with her, and Hagar and Sarah had an infighting that should have never happened between the two. She should have been appreciative, she should have been more gracious, but the fact of the matter is God utilized that for a separate reason altogether, which was a test to Abraham to see if he was going to love his son, his special gift, more than he loved God, just like Adam was given a special gift and loved the special gift more than he loved God. That's why Adam is the father of the fallen. Abraham is the father of the faithful, unless we want to whore out Abraham. You see what I'm saying?
Okay. No, you confused me, and
I'm
sorry.
sorry.
And this is the problem, and I think
I'll give you my number. We can talk deeper if you'd like.
Yeah, and this is the problem. I think I feel my sister's frustration. You see, the question I asked you is not about adultery or fornication. If it's on that, we can talk about that later. My question is about the wife context, and that's what I want you to focus on. Did Abraham commit adultery? That is not a topic. Is the wife clause? Because there's nowhere in Scripture that Hagar is called Abraham's wife. We have God himself on record. So our theology, astrology, psychology, no one cares about that. When God came on record to speak, he said, Abraham, listen to Sarah and send your handmaiden Hagar and the child. He never refers to Hagar as a wife. So if I ask, how did God look at it? Who cares what we think? God did not see her as a wife. So when we try to explain scriptures, we should try and put it into context. How does God see it? Not what can we deduce from the text. And I'm following my sister very well. How does God see this? We cannot say because God is silent on something, so we can come back and say it's okay because he's silent on it. No. See, so very good debate. You guys are all doing a good job, but I'm actually on my sister's side. She's doing a very good job breaking down the text. And anyone who does serious study on the text, from the Hebraic perspective, there's no way you can come out reading Genesis 16 with a conclusion that Hagar was seen as a wife. And please, let's put the text back into its culture at that time. When you're able, the wife, after 10 years, living in the land of Israel without a child, can go to the husband and give the husband permission to do this. Only the wife can suggest this. Check through all Torah records, all the laws, and it will bear witness to what I'm saying. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, both of you.
we got to pretty much wrap it up and get some final statements. But again, once again, I appreciate both special guests for making history on Debate Talk Radio, having the first debate of this caliber. We definitely appreciate them. And, of course, I'm going to leave the information in the description box for those who want to reach out to my special guests. But let's get some final statements. I'm going to give them 7 minutes each. Let's go to Mayanah. You can go ahead.
Thank you for that. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in and supporting the program. I hope to see many of you again on the Relationship Challenge, which we have every other Monday, hosted by Mayanah. With regard to this discussion, I apologize that so much of it has been just a repetition of other things. It was my hope that we would be able to go into other spaces. But I would like to remind the audience that the topic was whether or not this was the right of the man, and it wasn't a trick question. Instead, we were dealing with Torah, and we were dealing with the facts of the law. And unfortunately, my privileging the law became a problem for some of the callers and our panelists. But at the end of the day, whether we are Messianic or we are Torah-centered, we are Torah only, we are all Hebrew and therefore all Torah-centered. So I didn't imagine that it would be as upsetting as it turned out to be. In fact, I would imagine that Torah would have been common neutral ground and would cause less contention. Apparently, I misjudged that somehow. But having said all of that, it's not a law. This polygyny thought is not a law. It is not a commandment. We saw in Ecclesiastes that the whole duty of man is to fear the Creator and to keep His commandments. This polygyny thought does neither. It's not a reflection of the fear of the Creator, neither is it a response to a command. And so now that we understand that that doesn't happen, where does the thought come from? So I'm being, I got a lot of backlash for saying that this is something that is the institution of man, that it is androcentric, and it doesn't have anything to do with these two features, although we can clearly see that it does not. And it's not about me personally having an issue. This idea that I have some personal investment is a defense mechanism for the polygynists who are feeling very defensive, perhaps a little insecure about this decision to pursue polygyny. We see the Gene, and I appreciate his efforts trying to paint our ancestors as all polygynists and trying to show whatever he was attempting to show. But we see that Abraham was not polygynist, that the one law that we got to discuss, the Levirate law, does not box the kinsman redeemer into doing this possibly and potentially creating a polygynous union, because there is an out clause. And it doesn't necessarily mean that he has denied Yisrael the opportunity for the one guy to bear seed, because the next kinsman in line simply takes up that position. And I showed this happening in case law, in practical application with Ruth. We see that one kinsman redeemer declines his obligation, and the other one picks it up. And there's complete fulfillment of this Torah law. And the kinsman redeemer, I don't know why both parties, no one in the caller section and no one on the panel wants to acknowledge this, but the reason that the kinsman redeemer declines, the reason he gives is, it will complicate my own inheritance. So there's plenty in that. That's a very pregnant statement. A man's inheritance is what? Land, children of his own. What would being married to Ruth, how does that change anything? Obviously, he's considering other things. And so the idea that the law will force, again, he said it commands. There's no law that commands you. Even the Levirate law does not command this thing. And there are many features. This idea that it's not androcentric has to be reexamined, and reexamined honestly. I'm not painting it as a negative thing. That is something that they are assuming for themselves, imposing on themselves, and then defending without any accusers. It is something that is not happening as a response to the law. It's happening outside of the law. Like the example that Mayanah called in with the example of having kings. In fact, when the polygynists start talking, they're going to list all of the kings that did this thing. And we know that the only reason we had mortal kings at that time period is because we first had to what? Reject the Creator. We rejected him. He said they have rejected me this day. And so all of these things are going to happen. So we go back to the idea of missing the mark. Did we miss the mark when we elected kings, when we wanted to be like other nations? Do we miss the mark when we are trying to be in adherence with the fear and the law of the Most High? Have we missed the mark? That is the question, and the problem that the opposition is facing is the fact that Torah says sin is missing the mark. And it doesn't allow for them to scurry into one particular corner and say, oh, it means the law, and then think that they trap us with the fact that there is no law for polygyny. So they don't like me using a Torah definition, and I understand why. And now you understand why. With that, I yield the floor until next time.
All right, before we let you go, let the people know that's on the phone lines and on Skype where they can reach out to you.
Oh, thank you for that. Well, if you would like to reach out to me, I am on Facebook, and you can just Mayanah Johnson. Mm-hmm. You can also see some of the collaborative work that I do with Emunah Yisrael on our YouTube channel called Under the Palm, Hebrew Women Speak. I believe the link will be provided for you in the description box. I'm also the founder of G2M Inc., which is Genesis 2 Ministries Inc., and I do several scribal services, print work, and the like. If you want to reach out to me, you can send an email to g2m.inc.info@gmail.com. And thank you for the opportunity of sharing that with you.
All right, we definitely appreciate you. And let's go to Gene now with his final statements. Gene, 7 minutes. Go ahead.
Do you want me to give my info before I do my closing statement?
Yeah, either or. It's cool. You can do it now or later.
All right, let's do that, and then that'll give me my 7 minutes afterwards. So if you want to contact me, I only got a couple rules. One, if you're a married lady, please get your permission to husband before you call me or message me, please. It's just respectful to your husband. Second of all, my phone number, you can call or text, is 612-567-8423. I'm a talker more than I am a typer, so if you really want to talk to me, do it that way. But then also Facebook at Gene K Fresh Hour, GKF. And so you can contact me there or by email, the letter G, the letter K, the letter F, 1973@gmail.com. Again, my phone number for those who might have missed it, 612-567-8423. You can either text or call. Like I said, I'm a talker more than I'm a typer. So now I can go into my 7 minutes.
Go ahead. You good.
Sal? Okay. All right. So into my 7 minutes. Torah talks about in Genesis that a man shall leave his father and mother and cleave to his wife, and the two shall become one flesh. Seems like God is commanding all single men to be married. Or we can take it as descriptive and not prescriptive. You would have to leave your mother and father and cleave to your wife. If you don't have any parents that are all dead and you want to get married, are you now unable to? I think it's erroneous. Obviously, I think it's descriptive instead of prescriptive. We have to use the whole of Scripture. Obviously, my opponent wanted to go through Torah, which is fine, but was willing to leave out the rest of Scripture. She makes Abraham a whore. And whether you think Keturah was Hagar, and so an ongoing whore, or he married a third wife and must continue to make him a fornicator of a great magnitude and sired children to even worse than that, or he was a godly man and father of the faithful, like when Christ said, is God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob? Is he the God of the living or the dead? And so I wanted to say that I don't think Abraham's a whore. I think he's a great man, and I think he loved his family just like I love mine. And there is no law against it. This should be clear, and she's even admitted that. But there are laws that regulate it and command it. But now this is something I want to get a point. I think that my opponent's got a little bit of a chapped hide somewhere. I don't know where. Maybe he's dealing with some really abusive situations. Listen, if you're thinking about being polygynous or you are polygynous, you need to be better a husband than anybody else. You need to be better than the monogamous families out there. And I constantly work on being a better husband and father. You do need to protect your family legally in this day and age. And so I will agree with my opponent on that. So I will say thank you for bringing that point up, and for that, continue that good fight. As far as Boaz is concerned, there was two options there, this guy or Boaz. Listen, you got a choice, you got a choice. If you don't have a choice, then you got to do what God tells you to do, which was to marry her. And Boaz was very much, did that very thing. He married her and was a godly man, and blessed for it. And I know that 1 Timothy says that a woman should not instruct a man, but kind of what happened here tonight. And, but I know that she doesn't hold to 1 Timothy and Titus or John. And I've talked to many people in the Hebrew Israelite community that was really much against this very thing because of that. And I told him, I said, I don't have a problem with it per se. I think it's a debate, not really that she's trying to instruct me, she's just dealing with the topic. But, the point I'm trying to make here is I was very taken back by the fact that she didn't even think of 1 John 3:4 as something to be even considered. And she wanted to stay within Torah, but the second she got back against the wall when it came to a law in Torah, she ran out of Torah to go prove case law. And that just, the big argument we had was, we need to make sure that it comes from God, and it's from God, and this and that kind of stuff. She didn't do very well. Going outside of the Torah, I went through that. The fact that missing the mark has to do with God's law again. The mark is God's law. You can't focus on the mark without knowing where the mark is, and the mark is God's law. And there again, no law against polygyny. There's case law for regulating it, because if God, all he had to say was, don't get a second wife. But he didn't say that. He just said, if you get a second wife. And that was some of the worst scriptural dealings. If you steal, stealing is a sin, by the way. Stealing is a sin. Taking a second wife isn't. Getting a king, he didn't call it sin, but he said it was a bad move. Okay? So we know stealing is a sin, and just because if a man steals and if a man has two wives, you're comparing the word if clause. There's no such thing as an if clause. I don't know where you're getting that from. That was horrible. Men do not have the right. We'll talk about men's rights. That was kind of the topic, but it wasn't. It is and isn't. Monogamy. If a man's monogamously married, he does not have the right to force his wife into a polygynous. He has the right and the responsibility to honor that contract unless his wife allows him to alter that contract. My wife and I agreed to alter that contract. Women do not have the right to force men into it, but single men and men going into a marriage with the idea of polygyny is a possibility, have the right to a marriage. We also have the right to go to hell and without Christ too. Those are rights. So it needs to be clear cut. If you're getting married, if you're trying to change the covenant that you have to do it with your covenant partner. Like I said, I just feel like she's got her hide chapped somewhere. And listen, I'm all for protecting families, women, and children. Okay, I'm all about that. Let's stay on that. That mark, I will agree, needs to be kept. And there are some men that miss that, and we should hold them accountable, especially within the community of the Hebrew Israelites. I really hope that that's the case, that that's going to happen. We all miss the mark, and that is why we need Christ. We all fall short of God's holy standard, and that is we break his law. And so we do need Jesus Christ. And the fact of the matter is that if nothing else is said tonight that is impactful, I know my opponent and I have gone back and forth to each other, and I have no ill feelings for her. That's just how debates go. But the fact of the matter is that Christ said that marriage was the kind of the picture of what a relationship between him and you are. Christ has multiple wives, and he loves them and is kind to them all, provides for them. But he also provides that he covers their debt. He provides for them for spiritually and physically, all that kind of stuff. And he gives them heaven on top of it. And just remember that Christ loves you and that he died to show you and to pay a price you couldn't pay. And the fact is that if you come to Christ in repentance and faith and make him Lord, Savior, Master, and God, he then becomes your husband. And then we see how a husband is supposed to treat his wife, kindly, provide.
All right, family. Unfortunately, time is up. We definitely appreciate the audience for tuning in. Again, the show is archived. It is archived. You can always go back and check it out. By the way, people, check out the schedule. So when you see the show schedule on Blog Talk, you know what time everything is coming on. It's, of course, Monday to Friday at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. Make sure to check us out. Again, we appreciate everybody that tuned in to the first segment of the Righteous Wars. We definitely appreciate the audience out there. Make sure you keep it locked.
2017, Big Truth, the Big Talk for you. What up? Shout out Avo King, Big Boo, me. Shout out everybody. Check it. Hey yo, Debate Talk 4, you so you can absorb information free of charge so you can afford. Get poppin', live off the greatest doctrine. Sip the juice, know the ledge like the great Rakim. On a mission, not a small time thing. Defense biblical, offense got the haters watching. Hands are skill, footwork is ill. Get in the den, see if you can stand for real. If you rep Kim and Cool, yo, I rep Israel. If you Torah based only or new as well, welcome to listen. Style always fair decision. Two sides come together to compare what's written. Seeking the facts, seeking the max, teaching the act.